Happy Watanagashi, everyone! Today is the day of the Cotton Drifting Festival, at least in the Higurashi canon. It is the third Sunday of June, after all. 3 years ago, the Higurashi abridged crew and I worked on an iceberg video using one created by someone on Reddit who would prefer to go unnamed. For one reason or another, that video never saw the light of day. On November 28th, the user returned after 4 years to share an updated, extremely extensive iceberg. Full credit goes to them for compiling this together. Many people in the comments of this post were asking for someone to cover it in a YouTube video, and I figured, hey, I make a lot of Higurashi videos, why don't I do it? So to give back to the community, because you are all so patient with the timelines, I am reviving a 3-year-old project. Here is the ultimate Higurashi iceberg. This video is going to spoil the entire series for you in some capacity, so you've been warned. Also, I brought some friends along with me. Let's see how many of these faces you can recognize from the community. And a huge shout out to Best Sonozaki, R-Sam, and those sisters you know, as they all wanted to be a part of this project but couldn't for one reason or another. For each level, I saw a user named The Renegade Gamer say it would be cool to have each level read like it was a differing level of Hinamizawa syndrome. For level 1, the syndrome lays dormant, and it's known as the weakest level. In fact, many will not even know they're a carrier of it. The syndrome will not affect the host in any way, shape, or form. Not yet. As with the typical iceberg fashion, level 1 should be easy. This is all very available knowledge and information anyone can accrue from reading the visual novel, reading the manga, and watching the animes. Kenta-kun. Speaking of the iceberg, starting off with something all of us should know about is Kenta-kun. When Rena takes Keiichi to the dam construction site in Onikakushi-hen, we are introduced to her obsession with things she perceives as cute. If she finds something cute or adorable, she's just gotta have it. The object of obsession at the dump in the first arc is none other than Colonel Sanders from the fast food chain Kentucky Fried Chicken. The reason they call him Kenta-kun is because Kenta is short for the Japanese word for Kentucky, which is Kentucky. While this inclusion of KFC might seem extremely random to foreigners, many Japanese residents could feel immediately at home with this familiar figure, as ordering KFC is one of the most popular Christmas traditions in Japan. This is due to an extremely successful marketing campaign from 1974 called Christmas na wa Kentucky, or Kentucky is Christmas in English. Most KFCs in Japan are decorated with a life-size statue of the Colonel outside their locations. After his appearance in Onikakushi-hen, he would appear many times throughout the show, becoming a running gag. Also, a fun fact that I learned is that for some reason, Kenta is called Randy in a few of the visual novel localizations. Which, like, what? That's so weird. At first I thought this was simply maybe a translation error or something, but my buddy YandereTotodile informed me of something that not only completely blew my mind, it actually might have redefined how I viewed Higurashi, and seems to be something so obscure it's not even on this iceberg as its own entry. You guys are not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. The Hanshin Tigers in Japan were kind of a shitter team compared to everyone else in the Nippon Professional Baseball League, only making it to the Japan Series, which is their championship, 2 times, and losing both times. However, that changed in 1983. Yes, the year Higurashi takes place, when they brought in Randy Bass, an American from Oklahoma. While Randy was nothing special or crazy in America, in Japanese leagues he tore up the competition, helping the Hanshin Tigers reach the Japan Series again in 1985, and securing them their first win. He won a myriad of league awards and was marked as an MVP of the league in 1985. The team scored a surprise win at the Central Pennant, which is one of 2 parts that make up the Nippon Baseball League. This got people riled up and excited, leading fans of the team from their hometown, Osaka, to party really hard. In their celebration, they gathered people who looked like members of the Tigers, singing victory songs together as those lookalikes jumped into the Dantonburi River. However, the fans couldn't find anyone that looked like Randy, since, you know, he was an American, so they grabbed a nearby statue of Colonel Sanders from one of the local KFCs and tossed it into the canal. I mean, obviously Colonel Sanders and Randy Bass don't look anything alike, but finding a local white dude in Japan was going to be pretty impossible in the 80s. The team went on to win the Japan Series that year, but afterwards, things for the team became weird. The very next season, in 1986, their other star hitter, Masayuki Kakafu, would receive an injury to his waist that led to his batting average plummeting. After this, the entire rest of his career was plagued with injury after injury until his eventual retirement in 1988. Again, in 1986, their ace pitcher, Chikafusa Ikaide, received a heel injury, where his pitching was never the same afterwards. The team lost their first round draft picks to add new talent to the team, and then would proceed to lose the next 11 draft picks in a row. They even lost Randy himself after he went to visit America in 1988, but couldn't return back to Japan in time. If those all sound pretty bad, it gets worse. The Tigers proceeded to be at the bottom of their own league for the next 18 seasons, not even getting close to the pennant. Hell, it sounds like they never even won a game in that period. This all culminated in a mass superstitious belief being dubbed the Curse of the Colonel. Hanshin Tiger fans believed that by throwing the statue of the Colonel into the canal, the spirit of Colonel Sanders cursed them, and the only way to lift the curse was to retrieve the statue. A task that, while it may seem initially easy, proved to be near impossible, as the Dotonbori River is so dirty that it's impossible to see in it because of how polluted it is. Their loss streak was finally broken in 2003 when they won a central pennant again, but the fans of the team hadn't learned, as 5,000 of them rushed back to the Dotonbori River, plunging into it. They hoped by jumping into the river this would lift the curse, but instead, someone died. The Tigers lost the Japan series that year. In 2009, the upper half of the statue was recovered from the canal, looking very eroded and missing his hands, legs, and glasses. Because of this, fans believed the curse would persist since the statue was not whole. In 2009, more of the Colonel was recovered, but he was still missing his glasses and left hand. The Tigers would not win another pennant for 20 years, but in 2023, the curse finally appeared to be broken, with them winning their first Japan series since 1985, over 40 years ago. In case this story came off as confusing, let me break it down to you really simply. The Colonel, being called Randy in some localizations, is an homage to Randy Bass, a baseball player for the Hanshin Tigers and a supposed Colonel Sanders lookalike that started a curse in a baseball league. Although I think it might be a bit more than just simple homages, because there are a shocking amount of parallels between Higurashi and the Curse of the Colonel. With the Curse of the Colonel, Tiger fans defiled a statue, throwing it into the river and breaking it in the process. They committed a sin and were cursed by the spirit of Colonel Sanders, where they couldn't win a game until they were forgiven. With Higurashi, Sadako defiled the statue of Oyashiro-sama, breaking its hand. Our cast commits sins and are cursed by the spirit of Oyashiro-sama, where they couldn't win the game to escape death until they were forgiven. There are even more parallels outside of thematics, with the statue of Colonel Sanders and Oyashiro-sama both sharing a shocking resemblance and having a broken hand. The story taking place at a similar time, given 1983, to the Curse of the Colonel, and even the Hinamizawa fighters sound very reminiscent to the Hanshin Tigers. Ryukishi07 is a big baseball fan. Take this photo of him at the Dodgers game in America, for example, so it is highly likely that the story of Higurashi takes inspiration from the Colonel's curse. I know this was probably a really huge yap session to start off this iceberg, but when Totodile told me about this, I just knew I needed to share it with the larger community. It's actually mind-boggling. But anyways, let's move on to the next entry and introduce you guys to some really cool people that you might not have met yet.
Hi, hey, hello everyone, I'm Crewe on the sofa, and you might recognise me as that British guy who did the retrospectives a couple of years back. Or you might know me as the voice of Keiichi from Studio Weeb's Higurashi Abridged series. Or maybe you've checked out the Real Boy streams over on YandereTotodile's channel that we do along with MrHunteru himself and Kingside Castle. They're a lot of fun, come along and check those out. I'm still on my hiatus, even though it's like 15 years since I started YouTube. I've not got anything planned, and I don't plan on doing anything. But if you want to come along and check out the channel, then I'm sure it'll be linked somewhere. I can't promise you'll like anything. I can't promise that. But maybe you'll get something from it. I don't know. Psychoro Rush. Psychoro Rush. Psychoro Rush. Oh, you know what? After the original airing of Higurashi, Studio Dean made an OVA titled Higurashi no Naku Koru ni Ri. This was an adaptation of some visual novel original arcs, like Saigoroshi, Hajisarashi, and
昼壊し
while
恥さらし
and
昼壊し
are considered filler by many, the middle episodes are actually important but often overlooked. You see,
最殺し
is actually an epilogue showcasing life for Rika post
祭り林
after achieving her ideal world. What starts off as a fun day with the club quickly turns sour as Rika gets isekai'd into a different fragment. Even though it's still June of 1983, Hanyu isn't around. Her parents are alive, Satoshi is awake, the club was never formed, Takano never tried to kill her, Irei isn't here, Keiichi isn't here, and neither is Shion. The Great Hinamizawa disaster never happened, and it even seems like the syndrome itself doesn't exist. Even Satoko, her best friend, acts more like a bully than anything. And the biggest, most game-changingest thing of them all, that slaps the face of this perfect world? Hinamizawa never put up a fight against the dam project, meaning everyone has to leave the town by next year, and the curse of Oyashiro doesn't exist. Rika is able to get a hold of Hanyu, and she finds out how to return to her ideal world. Only problem is, she has to commit matricide. You see, for some reason, her mother is the 8th Furude girl born in a row, making her, according to legend, the reincarnation of Oyashiro instead of Rika. This presents her with an unenviable choice, one she's never had to make before. She came to this world by pure accident, and robbed this Rika of her life. Now she has to destroy and uproot that world, so she can return to hers.
最殺し
Serves as a way for Hanyu to show Rika that she can't treat life as if it has no meaning. Over the 100 years of looping, Rika formed a so-called witch personality, one more cynical, who believed she can't live as a normal person. She needs to pick one world and one life that she can truly invest in and live to the fullest. Even if a world looks perfect, the sins and mistakes we make along the way are what make us better people. It also serves as a way for Hanyu to come to terms with something she feels she's done over said 100 years. Rob Rika of a life with her mother. A lot of people will say that
最殺し
isn't canon, but Ryukishi has insisted time and time again that it is. Its story has been told in the PC ports, the console ports, the manga, and the anime, and it's even referenced in multiple scenes of Higurashi Go and Sotsu. But whether you like it or not is entirely up to you. Another thing that people apparently argue about is whether this world was a dream or not. Hanyu tells Rika that it was, but Rika believes it was real. Regardless, there's one scene in particular that has stuck with the fandom ever since it was first released. We are of course talking about the chair.
最殺し
Features a scene that has become one of, if not the most infamous meme in the entire Higurashi fandom. As mentioned, Satoko in this fragment is a bit of a bully to Rika, something established by Rena, meaning it's happened long before our Rika arrived in this world. Since all of the awful things that happened in Satoko's life never happened here, she's never had to learn or grow from those experiences. So, one day, after being bullied in class, Rika snaps and beats Sadako relentlessly with a chair. While kind of morbid, and hilarious, it happened so out of nowhere that it became an instant meme in the community, even being referenced in the friggin' Last Period anime crossover. There's fan art and jokes about it everywhere, and the scene became so iconic that they even called back to it in Higurashi Sotsu's 12th episode. I mean, I can't remember that scene off the top of my head, but I trust it's playing right now.
Oh, it's 4 a.m. I forgot to record, and I thought now be a good time to do it. You. You is a track that first played during the PC ports ending of Miyakashi Hen. In later iterations of this arc, it was given vocals by the seiyuu of Mion and Shion, Yukino Satsuki, and is meant to be about Shion's feelings for Satoshi. The leitmotif can also be heard in the visual novel at various ends for other arcs, but in an instrumental version and rearranged to be unique for the main character of that arc. If you played either the console arcs or listened to the drama CD, you would have heard a song called Thanks instead, which is also sung by Yukino Satsuki. Both songs were composed by the artist Dai. While commonly called Dear You by the Higurashi fandom, Dear You is actually the name of the album that released in 2006. It contains Rena's, Sadako's, Rika's, and Mion's version of You. Over the years, this has become basically the song for the fandom. There are nearly 40 official versions of You across all mediums of Higurashi, whether vocal or just instrumental, and it appears in the OVA adaptation of Higurashi Outbreak. It also appears in the ending of Higurashi Sotsu, where in that version, the singer for the very first Higurashi opening, Eiko Shimamiya, would return to perform it. My personal favorite version of You is You Bond, which features all the main cast singing about overcoming tragedy.
Hi, my name is Marcy, otherwise known as NezumiVA. I am a YouTuber who does analysis videos on various anime and video games and stuff like that. I'm also a voice actor professionally. I've also done some stream series of both Higurashi and Umineko, where I went through the entire thing, narrated all of it, and voiced every single character in English. So I guess that was a lot of fun. I've been asked to read some of the entries here, and I love Higurashi, so obviously I was very happy to do so. So thank you for including me, and I hope you enjoy the Iceberg. Angel Mort's uniform. Whether for better or worse, inevitably, if you're a fan of Higurashi, you will instantly recognize the Angel Mort uniform. This is an outfit that belongs to the, ostensibly, family restaurant Angel Mort, although it's quickly clear from these scantily clad outfits that the intended consumer base of the restaurants are otaku, perverts, or both. While the Angel Mort restaurant was inspired by a real-life chain in Japan called Jonathan's, the outfit for it seems to be mostly original, with their only loosely connected inspiration being the Dragoon outfit from Final Fantasy V. You can actually see early designs for the outfit in cards made by 7th expansion for Leaf Fight, released a year before Higurashi, where Ryukishi's original character Rena wore the Dragoon outfit, becoming their company's mascot, well before the release of Higurashi and the conception of who we now know as Rena Ryugu. In fact, the name Rena is technically the name of one of the party members in Final Fantasy V, though modern ports of the game refer to her as Lena, and since any party members can play any role in Final Fantasy V, Lena can don the Dragoon armor. He decided in a scan of the Leaf booklet that making Rena in this outfit was a big passion of Ryukishi's, and it's this passion that must have led him into making it a staple for this family restaurant so the design could continue to be seen. The outfit has since become iconic for 7th expansion fans, with it being a very popular cosplay outfit and reappearing all over the franchise, such as in Umineko's pachinko game, a manga Ryukishi wrote called Harem Royale, and the gacha game Higurashi Mei. There are even pretty recent official Higurashi figures featuring it as well. Ryukishi himself owns a handmade custom Angel Mort uniform that he spent 200,000 yen on in 2004. Factored for inflation, that is about 3,000 USD now. Its humble origins certainly are interesting, but I think I'll just save my money for more Higurashi merch, personally.
Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is Hedgehog, and I happen to run an analysis channel where I do extensive, multi-hour breakdowns of visual novels with the help of a full cast of voice actors. My big claim to fame at the moment is an 8-part series covering the entirety of the original Higurashi visual novel, so quite clearly, I have an interest in the subject. I have also just recently begun a series on The House in Fata Morgana, a visual novel that I believe any fan of Higurashi, and especially its sequel Umineko, will adore. So please, if you've got a minute, go give that video a watch. Burncastle. Frederica Burncastle refers to one of the most mysterious, hotly debated elements of Higurashi and 07's expansion's canon as a whole. While many anime-onlys might not have the slightest clue who this is, every manga and visual novel fan, like me, will know exactly who this entry on the iceberg refers to. At the beginning of every single mainline arc, we are greeted with a poem by the illustrious Frederica Burncastle, which hints to the audience what the general theming behind the chapter is going to be. Many have speculated that Frederica is actually just Rika, as Frederica is a combination of her two names, Furude and Rika, and Burncastle is how she refers to herself in Saikoroshi-hen. However, in one of these poems, Burn states she isn't Rika, and she also isn't Oyashiro-sama. In another poem, Frederica tells us that she was born after Rika began to give up and lose interest in finding a way out of the game she was trapped in. This suggests that Rika may have developed something akin to a split personality disorder, one personality being that of her 11-year-old self, and the other being a 110-year-old entity that has lived and been killed for over a century. For about 2 years, no one would know what Frederica looked like until the end of Higurashi Kai, where she confronts Mio Takano when she was a child. Not only does she share the same seiyuu as Rika, but she is clearly intended to be an older version of her. Immediately, watchers should realize this is impossible because Rika, of course, hasn't even been born yet, leading us to believe that she is actually an entirely separate entity. To make matters more confusing, she appears in front of Rika at the beginning of the manga adaptation for Minagoroshi-hen, this time being a carbon copy of Rika and declaring that she is a witch. In the Saikoroshi-hen manga, after learning her lesson of valuing her life, she lets go of her witch persona persona, but recognizes that it will still exist somewhere on a higher plane. And in the anime, Rika says by name that she is going to let go of Frederica Berncastle to live life as Rika Furude. However, this doesn't necessarily stick, as the same tone Rika uses for her 110-year-old self can be heard in Higurashi Go and Sotsu several times. Though hotly debated for quite some time, it broke out into full-on hysteria when Ryukishi 07's next release, Umineko no Nakokoro ni, which, don't worry, I'll be telling you all about in just a second, featured a character that looked identical to Rika, shared Rika's seiyuu, and was a witch named, of course, Berncastle. What doesn't help is that there are clear-cut connections between Rika and Umineko's Berncastle, such as her directly quoting Rika and repeating her infamous catchphrase, Nippa! These connections have only been made more clear through the manga adaptation of Umineko, with Rika and Hanyu being directly in some of the paneling. This has spawned actual decades worth of discourse on whether Higurashi and Umineko are in a shared universe, yes, a theory that has only gotten stronger after the release of Higurashi Go and Sotsu, and one that will continue for decades to come as Ryukishi has infuriatingly danced around outright explicitly connecting the two. Umineko. October 4th, 1986. The children and grandchildren of the rather infamous Kinzo Ushiromiya return to their childhood home, the island of Rokkenjima, for the yearly family conference. This year, however, the tensions are high. Kinzo's health is failing him, which brings up the ultimate question of the inheritance. On top of that, Kinzo himself has gone a little mad, ranting and raving about the Golden Witch Beatrice who originally gave him his fortune. This seems like the perfect setup for a classic whodunit mystery, and you would be right. Kind of. Just like Higurashi is a take on long-form serial mystery a la Twin Peaks, its sequel, Umineko When They Cry, is a take on your classic murder mystery, and it really seems to stick with this concept for its first chapter's release in 2007. However, quickly after it goes way off the rails, becoming not only a mystery story, but a story about mystery stories. Unlike Higurashi that wants you to solve its questions, Umineko seems hell-bent on confusing and confounding the average reader, and I would say that, yes, it definitely succeeds. It also succeeds at being a surprisingly direct sequel to Higurashi in some ways, as you would be thoroughly surprised at who decides to show up and how they relate to the original game. Kind of. Maybe. It's really confusing. Umineko has been ported to a bunch of different consoles, and much like its predecessor, has received its own fair share of spin-offs and adaptations. However, none of them ever quite took off like Higurashi did, and in my humble opinion, the best way to experience it is still to go with the original visual novel, though maybe I'm obviously biased.
Hi, my name's YandereTotodile. I currently run a Twitch channel where I stream movie watch parties with Hunter, Crewe, and King called Real Boys. I also play through various games and visual novels over there, including, obviously, Higurashi. Each year we host a celebration of the Higurashi community, including other content creators, many of which you'll see in this video, as well as an art challenge we cross-post between Twitter and Blue Sky. I also voice Irie in the current Higurashi abridging over on Studio Weeb 7. So if you love Higurashi like we do, be sure to check out everyone's projects here, and be sure to keep tabs on our socials as we finish out Matsuri 4 with our re-interview with Hunter, a 5-year anniversary of Higurashi Abridged, as well as our charity livestream on July 4th benefiting the Jed Foundation, including many chances at giveaways for really cool fan-made merch and official goods too. Twin Switch. In one of the most heinous cases of not adapting source material and leaving out key elements of a story, anime-only viewers missed out on a very important detail to Mion and Shion's story in their respective arcs. Due to Sonozaki traditional laws dictating in the case of a birth of twin heirs, one having to be killed, and Orio's allowance of both twins to survive breaks that tradition, but that's a key element of her character that also kinda shows up a lot later. Oreo would hold some semblance of distance between the two girls, with one being more involved and brought up as the true Sonozaki heiress. The other would be mostly overlooked and not get to enjoy the finer privileges being the heiress would entail. The firstborn, Mion, would be the next head of the clan, with the younger Shion as the other girl. After one incident where Mion would be upset at having to do all of these meetings and be bored, while Shion got to go do fun things all day, Shion would then style herself as Mion, and let Mion dress and style herself as Shion. This swapping of roles would happen frequently, not just as a break for Mion, but the two would also use it to prank and mess with their family. However, the rest of the family would notice and become annoyed at this swapping, so they came up with a solution to this issue. Mion would be taken to a family banquet, and subsequently marked with a tattoo of the Sonozaki demon, tattooing them without the girl's knowledge, while Shion would be sent away somewhere to be distracted with her parents. After it slips that one of Shion's favorite foods would be served at the banquet, I believe it's sea bream, Mion lets her take her place that day. This permanent marking and indoctrination as the sole leader of the clan would make the originally born Mion into the current character of Shion, and vice versa. Current Shion would then be sent away to private schools, and obviously no more swapping between the two, as one is clearly marked even if it is technically wrong. This mistake made by the family would become one of Shion's grievances against her family and her sister in Mayakashi, having felt betrayed and claiming that Mio knew what the actual plan would entail. While I love the original 2006 anime, and Mayakashi is still my favorite arc, Studio Dean really fucked up and did Shion's story so dirty by leaving out this key detail to her character, instead portraying her as the yandere-adjacent shell of herself. If you want an amazing adaptation of her true story, go read the manga for Mayakashi, which is truly peak fiction.
The Great Hinamizawa Disaster. The Great Hinamizawa Disaster is the name for what ultimately happens at the end of most arcs in the series. The public is told that a toxic volcanic gas erupted from Onigafuchi Swamp and killed the entire village in their sleep, forcing them to quarantine it and keep outsiders away. It makes perfect sense in early arcs because the villagers are all aware that Onigafuchi Swamp is, well, a swamp, and some swamp gases can kill you. However, it is eventually revealed that this story is a government cover-up triggered by a simple 3-step murder plan made by Takano. And yes, the prefectural government is aware of her research. They agreed to allow it on the basis of having a multitude of contingency plans. We don't know what most of them say, but we do know about Emergency Manual 34. In case of an L5 outbreak with the Queen Carrier dead, kill the entire village to prevent the spread of Hinamizawa syndrome. Out of desperation, Takano decides to force Emergency Manual 34 into action, like so. Step 1. Inject Tomitake with H173 so he quickly succumbs to terminal stages of Hinamizawa syndrome and kills himself. Step 2. Poison Irie with narcotics to make it look like he committed suicide. Step 3. Kill Rika in a way that looks like a ritualistic sacrifice. So then, we see the mountain dogs round up everyone from their homes in order to shelter in place due to a supposed increased concentration in toxic fumes from the swamp. However, rather than protect them, some other type of gas is thrown into the shelters to kill everyone. So, what about Irie? He's the director of the clinic, so he outranks Takano. He had to go in order for her to be the one to kick off Emergency Manual 34 in the first place. All of this begs the question, why? Takano's goal at the end of the day is to validate the studies of her adoptive grandfather Hifumi and prove to the world that Hinamizawa syndrome is real and dangerous. In her eyes, a disaster this notable will surely cement their legacy in medical history forever. The only fragments we know of where the Great Hinamizawa disaster doesn't happen are Watanagashi, Mayakashi, and Matsuribayashi. In the first two, Rika was either killed by or died near Shion, so Takano was not able to prove whether the Queen Carrier was alive or not. And in Matsuribayashi, they fight and eventually win against Takano, which completely prevents her from taking any relevant steps towards enacting the disaster. RIP girl boss.
Greetings, men. And non-men. My name is Kenemon, but you can call me Ken. I've been in the Higurashi fandom for well over a decade, but unlike the other outspoken talents in this iceberg, my contributions are more, well, let's say, lurking. Maybe you've seen me before on forums, in comment sections, as a special guest on live streams. I could be anyone. More recently, I was cast as Okanogi, and Paul, in Higurashi Abridged. My passions lie in all things obscure and weeby, so this iceberg was a joy to dive into. Tomitake Flash. This one requires just a bit of context. Without spoiling too much of the iceberg below, there's a Higurashi fighting game. No, not that one. There we go. It's called Higurashi Daybreak, and we'll hear some more about it later on. Most of the Higurashi characters are playable in it, including our resident photographer Jiro Tomitake. The characters in Daybreak have some pretty strange moves, and Tomitake is no exception. One particular move has him brandish his camera and just take a picture of you, while he loudly declares, "Tomitake Flash!" Tomitake Flash! Then the opponent flies backwards. Maybe because of how bright the camera is? Look, there are some things just beyond our mortal understanding. Anyway, plenty of things about Higurashi Daybreak are silly, but this one is pretty memorably ridiculous. Maybe something just about the way he says the attack name? Tomitake Flash! It became a bit of a minor meme, and you know how 2006 was with memeable phrases. Tomitake Flash! About a year and a half after Daybreak's publishing, 7th Expansion acknowledged the attack again. After Higurashi Kai aired, they published 3 CDs, each featuring 2 characters. Each CD contained an audio drama and original songs for both of its characters. The second one starred Takano and Tomitake's song was called Ai no Inazuma Senko, or Flash of Love for us English speakers. The song is sung by the actual voice actor of Tomitake, Toru Okawa. The song is styled like an 80s superhero anthem, maybe inspired by the tokusatsu-style way that Tomitake shouts in Daybreak. It has Tomitake loudly shouting, "Tomitake Flesh!" in the chorus and swearing to fight for justice. And honestly, it's a pretty sweet tune. Here, I'll play a bit of the chorus for you. All three of those CDs are pretty interesting artifacts in their own right. The first one features Rika and Hanyu, and the third one features Keiichi and Satoshi. All of them are voiced by their actual anime voice actors too. It's some real high-effort stuff. The Tomitake and Takano album also includes Takano's character song, Bon Karma. That one's a pop rock style tune about realizing her grandfather's dream. Editor, let's hear a bit of that, shall we?
Independent Fox View with Peashy Hachi here. You can find me on YouTube and sometimes Twitch, covering all sorts of otaku content. Also, please check me out. Most of my viewers are Japanese and they don't understand me. Hope you enjoy the iceberg. Kankan. Schizophrenia. Hinamizawa syndrome seems to be inspired by a conglomeration of many different types of existing conditions in the world, with one of the most popular comparisons being schizophrenia. The reason for these comparisons are those with schizophrenia often experience hallucinations or delusions and a disorganization in the manner of thinking. They basically have a hard time differentiating what's real from what's fake. Because of these similarities, many fans will originally go on and think that Hinamizawa syndrome is actually just a variation of schizophrenia, although it wouldn't make sense in the long run, as we learn by the end of the story that Hinamizawa syndrome is caused by a parasite people pick up in the village.
Hey there everyone, it's Chloe. If you remember me from last year, I did a video with Hunter on Pride anime for Pride of last year. And now I'm back in the month of June for, well, not a Pride video, but I'm doing it for an explicitly more important reason, and that is Higurashi and When They Cry related stuff. If you recall, I was brought on here because of the fact that I had previously done stuff like a Higurashi retrospective, and since then I have done a umineko retrospective on top of that. So you know, I've been keeping myself really busy with that sort of thing in terms of When They Cry. And now, I'm really excited to get to share all of my hyperfocus in regards to stuff regarding Higurashi specifically with you all in this iceberg. So, well, I don't feel like I need to introduce myself all much more than that. If you have been following Hunter's channel, you know who I am by now. But yeah, let's get to it. Yusoda. Yusoda refers to one of the most iconic moments of Higurashi during Onikakushi Hen, where Rena yells at Keiichi for lying. Before this, there were some off moments between the cast and Keiichi, but it was here that it becomes abundantly clear to anyone consuming the series that something was absolutely not right, marking a clear turning point. The line has become infamously used, very infamously even, and is used many times in the series, with many characters having their own Yusoda moments, but none come close to the very first one with Rena in all mediums of Higurashi. As a fun little tidbit on top of that as well, another Studio Dean anime that was adapted along sometime after Higurashi, Setai no Ichizan, actually did in fact have a reference to Higurashi, wherein the character of Kurimu actually did state the phrase Yusoda in a similar fashion to how Rena said it in Higurashi, while the main character of Ken Sugisaki actually corrected them and broke the fourth wall by stating that it was making a reference to Higurashi. So, you know, that was kind of a fun little tidbit to throw in on top of that as well.
I'm Kitten, and as my name might suggest, I'm a German catgirl VTuber. And besides of getting into Higurashi at a way too young age like most Germans, I also enjoy art and rigging VTuber models on the side. So if you like that, come check me out. I swear I can be funny sometimes. Cat Eyes. In Onikakushi Hen, Higurashi's first arc, when Keiichi is experiencing Hinamizawa syndrome symptoms, he perceives Mion and Rena as having cat-like eyes across all the mediums. While we see them again in the opening for the Higurashi anime, They don't appear again in the series, likely implying this is how Keiichi perceives threats when he has high levels of the syndrome.
Hey, this is Kevin, and I run a YouTube channel where I make video essays on anime and films that I like. I'm kinda dead right now, but any excuse to make Higurashi content is always worth a fun time. Mahjong. Mahjong is a game that has recurring appearances in Higurashi's story thanks to Oishi, who is a massive fan of the game. We see it being played most prevalently in Himatsubushi Hen with Akasaka and Oishi, and in Higurashi Go and Sotsu where Oishi teaches the Game Club crew a sleight of hand trick with the game. Being a recurring bit in the Higurashi series, there have been several implementations with it in the IP. The first was Higurashi Mahjong, a game released on Japanese app stores by Dwango in 2008. The game has small cutscenes and features the Studio Dean art style for Higurashi Kai. Available on it is a story mode where you play as Keiichi and has multiple endings, a free play mode, and a gauntlet where you play multiple rounds. The game also included characters from another Dwango Higurashi phone game, those characters being Wakaba and Kawajima. We'll talk about both of them later on. For years, this game was considered lost media until it was recovered in 2024. There are various places you can play the game now online. The second was Higurashi Jean, released in 2009, available at Japanese arcades and later ported to the PSP. On it, you could play Oyashiro mode, which was the main story mode, Club mode Extra mode, which was its continuation of the story, Club mode, which was its free play mode, Hachi Hen, which features all 6 bonus stories, Omakase mode, which is its tutorial, and Option mode, which lets you change the various ways the game is played. The gameplay of course is just Mahjong, but the art style for this game looks so wrong. It's hard to pinpoint why, something just clearly isn't right. Shockingly, John had 2 manga adaptations of its stories, with one being simply just Higurashi Jean, and the other being Higurashi Suban Megaishi Hen.
Hey, I'm WTF, it's Ed. I like to make when they cry memes, like a lot of them. I also like to play video games, chit chat with people in the community, and play guitar a little bit, so if any of that interests you, you'll have plenty of time to check it out after this video. Nipa, a phrase you will often hear in all of Higurashi. Nipa is the verbal onomatopoeia known as a gitaigo. This is a Japanese term that basically is used to describe the state or condition of the person by making a verbalized sound. When Rika goes, Nipa, that means she is smiling or happy.
Renapan. You know how when Rena gets super pumped up by something she thinks is cute, she punches it? Well, that's what the entire core of this minigame is. After receiving a bunch of punches from Rena, Keiichi swears to get revenge for himself and Mion by training to combat Rena's punches. The gameplay features Rena in an Angel Mort uniform throwing punches at the player, with your goal being to dodge them. You can adjust Rena's punching speeds too, depending on how much you want to challenge yourself. Once you clear level 3, Keiichi officially joins the Soul Brothers and dubs himself K. That's right, the Soul Brothers as a whole originated from these minigames, as confirmed by Ryukishi07 himself. There is a version online of Renapon that was available for some time that had leaderboards on it, but became unavailable to the larger public due to Adobe ending their Flash player. However, you can still play it today by downloading Chrome extensions like Ruffle that re-enable Flash player games, although the game is entirely in Japanese. Once again, with the random manga adaptations, Renapon got its own manga adaptation as a limited gift to those who ordered the 3rd volumes of Meikashi Hen and Sumihoroboshi Hen. Also included in this volume was a manga adaptation of Batsukoishi, which many people know as the first episode of Higurashi Kira. Despite how rare this may sound, one of those booklets was sold the month this video was being written for $45 on eBay. Our Surf expansion has since referenced Renapon and other works, featuring the whole cast and how the game works.
Air conditioning. Much like the chair from Psycho Roshi Hen, air conditioning is another meme in the Higurashi community. To get suspects cozy before questioning them, Oishi always offers to take whoever he's questioning to his car because it has air conditioning in it. And there are other times in the story where he just seems really thrilled to have AC, which honestly makes sense. Air conditioning wasn't super common in Japan until 1958 when Panasonic released the first widely affordable unit for consumers, and it took decades for cars to have access to AC, which finally became common for every car to have one in 1994. So Oishi was kinda ballin' for having this car. It must have cost a fortune back then.
Maggots. Maggots refers to one of the most common symptoms of level 5 in Hinamizawa syndrome, that being formication, a real-life condition where a person feels as if insects are crawling under their skin. In the show, notably during Sumihoroboshi Hen, when someone has level 5 of this syndrome, they begin to scratch at their body to release what they believe are millions of maggots. In reality, those maggots are just their blood oozing everywhere. And now we approach level 2. Much like level 1, this tier of the syndrome is hard to decipher. The host will show no symptoms of a greater problem, but ever so slightly, they are susceptible to a much greater disease. As for the iceberg, while many of you will likely still know most of the entries on this tier, some of you may start to get confused or have never heard of these before. 1500 seconds. Starting off with one most anime watchers of Higurashi won't understand is 1500 seconds. In Tatsurogoshi Hen, after Sadako has her breakdown in the classroom, Keiichi's mental completely snaps. When Mion says he is powerless, he thinks to himself that he isn't. All he has to do is erase Sadako's uncle. In mere seconds, he comes with a fully fleshed out plan to kill Teppei and determines he can follow through with this plan, accomplishing it all in 1500 seconds or 25 minutes. Not only does it happen with Keiichi, but the scene is paralleled by Shion in Minagiroshi when she's trying to save Sadako. It's a cool callback that shows quickly just how much Sadako means to Shion post Miyakashi Hen, and also how much Keiichi has grown as he's able to help Shion move away from that thought train. It is a very powerful scene in both the visual novel and especially so in the manga, as Keiichi isn't quite the same in Tatori's manga after it happens. We hear a lot about how smart and intelligent Keiichi is throughout the runtime of Higurashi, but it is here that we just see how smart he really is. And it is terrifying how quickly he plans out a foolproof murder. It's a shame that Dean didn't adapt this for the anime.
Poems. As we mentioned in the first level of the iceberg, each arc in Higurashi is introduced to us with a poem by Fredrika Berncastle. Each poem gives the reader an often cryptic hint about the themes or events present in the subsequent arc. While omitted from the anime adaptation and the original release of Onikakushi Hen, these poems can be found throughout the manga and in every arc in the current visual novel releases since their debut in Watanagashi Hen. Returning to these poems with the full context of the story can be very rewarding for those looking to get the most out of this franchise.
Miyotsukushi. Miyotsukushi Hen, or the Waterway Exhausting chapter, is a console-exclusive chapter that can be found in Higurashi Matsuri for the PlayStation 2 and 3, the PS Vita, and Kizuna for the Nintendo DS. This arc functions as an alternative ending to the series, instead of Matsuri Bayashi Hen, taking place after Minagiroshi. It is also one of the few arcs in the series to not have been written by Ryukishio 7, being written by Kiichi Kano of another visual novel company called Alchemist. In Matsuri Bayashi Hen, all of the problems of Watanagashi Hen, Miyakashi Hen, Tatsurogoshi Hen, and Sumihoriboshi Hen are already solved. What I mean by this is when Rika spawns into this fragment, she doesn't have to help Shion come to terms with Satoshi's death and embrace Sadako while also not worrying about ruining their relationship with her sister. Rena doesn't have to deal with her dad and Rina, and Teppei never comes back to Hinamizawa. Instead, she can focus entirely on how to beat Takedo and end the cycle. In Miyotsukushi Hen, these problems are not solved. In fact, they are all present in this arc. Rika and Keiichi must work together to help fix the Sonozaki family and help Shion cope. They must figure out how to save Satoko from Teppei, they have to figure out how to deal with Rina, and they also still have to work together to stop Takano from executing Manual 34 to kill the entire village. To top it all off, Hanyu is nowhere to be found, and it incorporates console-exclusive characters like Natsumi Kimiyoshi and Tomoe Minai, hence why the name is Miyotsukushi Hen, as it's a conjunction of Mi-O-Sukusu, which means to give one's all. To many fans of the series, this is actually the preferred ending to Higurashi, as it adds a lot of development to both Rika and Keiichi. Plus, it gives Mion a lot to do. It neatly ties up a lot of the threads of the story, and it even adds some new mysteries to people that want to speculate on the series further once it's over. Despite coming out after Matsuri Bayashi, the concept for this arc was conceived while Minagiroshi was being written, and was written alongside it. It was intended to be an arc exclusive to consoles, so that returning fans of the series would have incentive to complete the game, so instead of being a replacement for Matsuri, it's more like it's meant to complement Matsuri. Epika, somebody that helped us work on this iceberg, absolutely amazing person, supplied us with some information about an interview provided by Ryu, where he mentioned that he lived close to alchemists, so it was really easy to meet with them. He wanted Matsuri to have a happy ending, and for Miyotsukushi to have one too, just in a different way. Matsuri would focus primarily on the relationship between the kids with the adults. whilst Mio Tsukushi would focus on the kids' relationship with each other. The arc has received several renditions and releases. The first was in February of 2007 and is generally received as the best version of this arc. The next was in 2010 for Kizuna, where it introduced a controversial plot point, that being Rika was stored in the storehouse the entire arc. Hanyu was actually disguised as Rika the entire time. This wasn't received very well, as it felt like it undermined a lot of Rika's development in the arc, and honestly the entire series, considering she wasn't even a part of what resolved it all. After this was Higurashi Sui in 2015, which split Miyatsukushi into two arcs. Miyatsukushi Ura, which contains the additions of the Kizuna rendition, that being the Hanyu plot twist, and Miyatsukushi Omote, which was the original arc from 2007. Finally, Miyatsukushi was released with Higurashi Ho, which kept the two differentiated with the Ura and Omote subtitles. I'll be sure to cover the arcs in full on the timelines, so don't even worry if any of that was confusing. Of course, you also can read this on your own at any point in time, because Lambda Delto, being the Chad that he is, has all of these up on his channel.
Surupettan. Oh hey, I get to talk about my other favorite weeb thing. Surupettan stems from the Touhou Project franchise, which is a series of bullet hell games, and one of my favorite game series of all time. Even if you don't know Touhou by name, you've probably seen Bad Apple, which is a Touhou fan animation set to a remix of one of its songs. Or maybe you've played Undertale, which takes heavy inspiration from Touhou. Both Touhou and When They Cry are doujin games, to oversimplify Japanese indie games, and so they have a lot of crossover audience. Funny enough, both the first Touhou game in the modern canon, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil, and Higurashi's Onikakushi-hen were released at the exact same convention, Comiket 62 in 2002. Touhou's creator has an incredibly lax stance on fan works, and so Touhou songs are regularly remixed and sold at conventions. One such song was 2007's Surupettan, a remix by the doujin group Silver Forest of a song from the 9th Touhou game. It's set to lyrics about the character Suika Ibuki, who my fellow weebs might recognize from the animation We Are Japanese Goblin, and its remake that got popular in 2022. It's a totally goofy song, just chock full of Japanese memes from the time, namely the Mojipitan theme, and Help Me Aaron, and Let's Go Onmyoji. And as a side note, Let's Go Onmyoji in particular is such a weird but core pillar of old internet weebery that it's probably on the lowest layer of some other iceberg. I mean, seriously, just look at it. Surupettan translates to smooth and flat, and the song itself is mostly just meme nonsense. It's about Suika stalking the Shrine Maiden and Touhou protagonist Reimu, while also getting teased about being flat-chested. Repeatedly. Truly, 2007 was a different time. It's on this iceberg because Higurashi is directly referenced in the lyrics. Because Higurashi and Touhou have such a huge amount of crossover, being indie games that got popular at the same convention, it makes sense that the songwriters in Silver Forest would want to give them a shout out. In the second verse, the lyrics are, I can hear footsteps coming up behind me again today. Oyashiro-sama is stalking. Curses, disappearances, sacrifices, torture, demoning away, and sneak eating? The song is a little bit nonsense, but my view is that these lyrics are from Reimu's perspective, as she realizes she's being stalked by Suika. It makes sense that Reimu would confuse Suika with Oyashiro here. The song isn't the only instance where you could hear footsteps from a flat-chested girl with horns following a shrine maiden. The song has since become pretty popular, racking up almost 6.5 million views on Nico Nico Doga, which is basically Japanese YouTube, and even nearly 1 million views on YouTube proper. Just look at the art style in that fan animation. Man, I miss 2000s weeb YouTube. Finally, the song even got acknowledged by 7th Expansion. In Higurashi's sequel, Umineko, the character Jessica Ushiramiya goes on stage and performs the song, singing it even while dressed as Suika. Wait, that's not Suika. She's actually dressed as Marissa, a completely unrelated Touhou character? Why not Suika, though? I guess it's because Jessica and Marissa are both blonde and have similar-ish personalities, so it's still a Touhou reference. And Marissa's a lot more recognizable than Suika, because she's a main protagonist. Whatever, I don't know. All I know is that playing Umineko blind as a Touhou fan and hearing this song was a jump scare that made my soul fly right out of my body. Cute in retrospect, but still. What's ironic here is that this song actually provides a dire hint at the ending of Umineko. If you don't know, I won't explain why. Read Umineko. I promise you won't regret it. And if you know, you know.
Ham hands. Ham hands, one of many ways and terms used to describe the charming and cute features of Ryukishi's original sprite art. Art which is divisive, you either love or hate certain art styles used for the series. While I was initially against the original sprites, they grew on me so quickly, and just look at them hams. How can you not want them to just squeeze the ever-loving life out of you? Or even, I don't know, just get a high five with the mittens. Just look at this other interpretation made by artist Mapinoko, where they're depicted as their own set of, essentially, Hulk hands gloves.
Rumiko Chie. Rumiko Chie, or Chie Sensei as many of you know her as, is the teacher of the group's school. Many people might not know this, but Chie did have a character model in Higurashi until Tatari Goroshi Hen, the third arc of the series. This is because Chie was a reference to CL from Tsukihime, and he was waiting for permission from Type Moon and Nasu to have her look like CL. Now, Type Moon is credited for this where it's applicable in the series, like at the end of each episode in the anime. Many people may think this is random, but at a panel for Anime Expo 2024, Ryukishi mentioned that Tsukihime was a huge inspiration for Higurashi. He had always thought about writing his own story, but after reading Tsukihime, he thought to himself, I will write my own story. So I get it, wanting to have a reference to pay credit to something you love makes complete sense. The two look very similar. They have the same birthday and blood type, they also have a huge love of curry. She even hits one of CL's poses in Hajisarashi Hen, and in Higurashi Daybreak, CL's outfit is a pickable skin for Chie. Although with their permission, Ryu had to be very careful as he was explicitly told if Chie ever outshone CL, they would revoke their permission. When Higurashi Go was airing, there was an episode where most of the side characters in the series were at level 5. Many wondered why Chie was not a part of the crowd to go level 5, and Ryukishi said he considered it, but ultimately decided against it since she is a guest character, as he put it. It could be because he didn't want to risk tarnishing his relationship with Type Moon, but we'll never truly know.
Pachinko. Pachinko is a form of Japanese gambling via pinball and slot machines, and it's one of the only legal ways to do so over there. Higurashi has had a wide variety of pachinko machines throughout the years. The first one to come out, according to this script, is Pachi Slot Matsuri in 2010, based off the PlayStation port of the visual novels. In 2013, we got CR Itadaki, which shockingly has Studio Dean animated scenes of an arc that takes place 20 years after the Great Hinamizawa disaster. Also, Higurashi's Outbreak OVA was made to promote this machine, which is crazy considering Outbreak is its own separate story. Anyway, in 2014, we got Pachi Slot Kira, which, as you can imagine, focuses around Higurashi Kira. In 2016, we got Pachi Slot Kizuna, based on the DS port of the game. Weird they decided to make it based on a game that was already 6 years old at that point, but whatever. In 2020, we got Pachi Slot Meguri, which actually has its own arc, called Megurimasu, along with a brand new character named Gasai-onji. It even has animated sequences and exclusive songs. It was largely considered not canon because, well, the arc is exclusive to a pachinko machine. But reappeared in Higurashi Me, the franchise's gacha game, which has made some question if this arc is actually important. The last pachinko machine, at the time of this recording, was released later that year after Go and Sotsu began airing, and is a remake of the Matsuri machine from 2010, but with Go's art style.
Kimchi. Kimchi, of course, is fermented cabbage in a Korean dish, or if you're cultured, a fart cloud and chowder depending on how old you are. The reason it's on this iceberg is because in Higurashi Kai's 6th episode, Rika eats kimchi to overload Hanyu's senses. This shows us that Rika and Hanyu have shared senses to some capacity, and it's taken a step further when Rika eats green peppers in the manga-exclusive arc Kokoroi Yashihen. Also, for whatever reason, their sense connection is elaborated during the end sessions of that very episode, with Rika stating that Hanyu can feel it when she's, playing her guitar, if you catch my drift. Also, just want to point out that a lot of these Kai-en previews are really unhinged like this. You couldn't tell already, or you have not seen them yourself. Just, the one that always sticks out to me is the one that goes through a list ranking all the perverts of the series. Thanks, Kimchi, for this discussion.
Adult Rena. Much like anime fans wouldn't know about the 1500 second scene existing, manga and visual novel fans may not know there's an adult version of Rena in the Higurashi anime. The Dean anime is notorious for cutting out a lot of stuff from the first season of the adaptation, but they try to fix things throughout the second season, starting off with an episode called Reunion. Reunion is an adaptation of Demon Script, an epilogue to Sumi Horubushi Hen. It takes place later in the fragment, revealing that Rena was the only survivor of Hinamizawa. The episode takes place 20 years after the great Hinamizawa disaster, with a much older Oishi and Akazaka revisiting the town. The episode is meant to adapt the tip from the visual novel, which shows us how Sumi ended, as well as include stuff to hint at Rika's looping, Manual 34, and more. Following the episode is the next entry on this list, Yakusamashi Hen.
Yakusamashi. Yakusamashi, or the Disaster Awakening arc, is an anime-exclusive arc that takes place between episodes 2 and 5 of Kai. It was actually requested by Ryukishi to further elaborate, touch on, and fix their continuity, because of the many details Studio Dean left out in the first season. It's notable that Ryukishi wrote the entire script for this arc to try and help Dean out. The arc itself follows Satoko as she notices Rika begin to act strangely. Some of the cut content includes the following: Shion remembering Satochi's wish from Miyakashi to protect Satoko and enrolling at the Hinamizawa school, some scenes of Satoko's past, and stuff with the Hinamizawa fighters, as well as Satoko's penchant for traps, showing how Keiichi formed a friendship with Kameda. It combines the endings of Tateru Higurashi, where Keiichi survives, and Terai Mawashi, where Mion survives, but of course we all know it ends in disaster anyway. Although it's only necessary for anime onlys, it's still a fun watch for sound novel and manga readers.
Shirakawa. Shirakawa Go is the name of a village found in the Gifu Prefecture of Japan and is the real-life inspiration for the town of Hinamizawa. It's also a World Heritage Site, with several landmarks that are legally protected under international treaties. In the village, you can find the Hachiman Shrine, which became the Furude Shrine in Higurashi. You can also find the inspiration for Satoko and Rika's house, Keiichi's house, the Sonozaki estate, the water wheel used in a myriad of scenes from the show, and the overlook on the village. Ryukishi 07 took photos of these places and applied a filter to them before making them the backdrops of the visual novel. The town seems to be welcoming to tourists who are fans of the series, as there's a local store that sells merchandise for the franchise, a store that welcomes people to Hinamizawa, as well as having life-size statues of the game's club members on one of the farms in the village. Okinomiya doesn't seem to be based on Shirakawa and was instead inspired by the Nishikase neighborhood in Tokyo. You can tell, as the toy store that ended up becoming Yoshiro's in the visual novel is here, and this is where the inspiration for Angel Mort, real-life name Jonathan's, is located. Also, a fun fact from YandereTotodile: Wolverine visits Shirakawa Go in his comics, apparently.
Gundam references. There are various references to Gundam through the Higurashi franchise. In episode 5, Keiichi hits his dad when they visit Angel Mort for being a pervert, and his father says, "No one's ever hit me my entire life, not even my own father," which is a reference to the first season of Gundam when Bright hits Amuro. When he hits him again, he replies, "Not even my father hit me." Then in the visual novel, Mion mentions a colony dropping and leading to fight for independence by Propagandality of Zeon, which is a reference to colony drops in Gundam led by the antagonist Principality of Zeon. There are apparently plenty more in the visual novel.
Watanagashi Eyes. During the Watanagashi arc, after Keiichi realized Shion was responsible for the crime and confronts her, she began to laugh hysterically, and then the reader gets jump scared. It comes out completely nowhere and shows only these two guys on the screen with a stinger-like sound effect. In the original visual novel, the attack belonged to Rika's friend and fellow 7 expansion member, Narase Tsubaki. The scene was referenced in the manga adaptation for the arc, but it did not find its way into the anime in any form.
Kana? Similar to Rika's iconic nipa, kana is how Rena often ends her sentences as either a vocal stem or verbal tip. Think of it how a lot of people say like, or sentence filler words like that. It's her repetition of this phrase, among others, that's led many fans to believe that Rena could have autism. In addition, when Rena says kana, it is likely a pun, as suggested by Reddit user Reddit Google. You see, kana is a verbal onomatopoeia, or gitaigo, for the sounds cicadas make, so it's possible she says this as a form of mimicking the cicadas around her.
Nigeranai. This is a phrase roughly translating to "you can't escape" or "you can't run." In the first opening for the Higurashi anime, you can hear what sounds like a faint chanting at the beginning. If you take this audio and run it backwards, it'll sound like this. Almost like it's a hidden message saying you can't escape. Viewers who knew the story of the VNs knew exactly what this was. Then, in the second opening, Naraku no Hana, that very audio played in reverse awaits at the end of the song. was a really cool Easter egg for the keen listeners back in 2007.
Kira. To celebrate Higurashi's 10th anniversary in 2011... Oh god, that's when I started my YouTube channel. To celebrate Higurashi's 10th anniversary in 2011, Studio Dean animated Higurashi no Naku Koru ni Kira. For its first episode, it adapted, otherwise known as the penalty-loving arc, where Keiichi and the Soul Brothers... imagine the other female members of the club in perverted fantasies. This episode has become infamous in the community because it showcases some pretty insane Guna moments for most of the female cast. That is the first and only time I will probably say Guna unironically. It's also frankly sickening, considering that 3 of these guys are grown-ass men, talking about girls who range from 10 to 14. After that, Dean aired 3 original episodes, one being a magical girl episode, the other giving material for most of Keiichi's different ships, and the final being 2 Rikas niparing at each other for 22 minutes. All 4 episodes have some form of fan service in them, but none to the extreme of the first. Before it aired on the website for Kira, they'd release a brief manga series to get people hyped for this new series. This included a bunch of gags and goofs, like the Soul Brothers all in punishment games, and Long May They Stay There, Hanyu as a magical girl, and the super small baby Rika. Depending on who you ask, Kira was either a low point or a high point for the series. But personally, that final episode is bloody beautiful, and probably my favourite ending the series has ever had. Go Sotsu can go suck a lemon.
Throughout the runtime of Higurashi, Mion's casual outfit seems to have her just packing an actual-ass gun. Much like the sharp side of Inada, Mion never actually uses the gun once in the main story, and some of her character models have it completely removed. According to a now-deleted article from Dengeki Online, it was meant to be used later on in the story, and to be a modified airsoft gun that shot ball bearings, but it was removed due to a real-life incident that occurred, although that incident is never named. But since some of her sprites still have it, and it was left in the anime, it's been left up to fan speculation for years on what exactly it is. Finally, in Higurashi Sotsu, it was addressed, where it was shown that Mion does know how to handle a gun, and is a pretty decent shot, too.
Tokyo. While many may mistake this for the city, Tokyo is the name of a secret nationalist organization that wants to keep Japan as a major world power after their losses in World War II. They collaborate frequently with politicians and are particularly keen participants in the Alphabet Project, or the ABC Project, which focuses on 3 types of weapons: atomic, biological, and chemical. So, of course they took an interest in Takeno's research about Hinamizawa syndrome, seeing it as a potential bioweapon they could get their hands on. They also knew about the research from pretty early on, as the organization was founded by Koizumi, an old man who was a friend of Takeno and her grandfather. Irie and Tomitake also belonged to this organization, which was how they found their way to Takeno, and also another reason why they're always targeted by her in order to kick off the Great Hinamizawa disaster, as they would easily be able to sniff out the discrepancies in her story. Outside of this information, the organization is extremely mysterious, and not a ton is known about them.
Yandere allegations. A yandere, for anyone who's here and has somehow managed to avoid learning, is someone who is so in love that they are driven to obsession, possessiveness, and in plenty of anime, violence. Yandere allegations is really 2 sub-arguments based around 2 individual characters from Higurashi, and whether they qualify as yanderes or not. Let's talk about each of them briefly. The first yandere allegation concerns Rena. Plenty of memes will showcase Rena alongside other yanderes, like Yuno Gasai from Mirai Nikki, particularly in memes from the early 2010s or late 2000s. With the recent popularity of yandere aesthetics on Twitter and TikTok, Rena has shown up in recent memes and group photos of yanderes too. This allegation is absolutely cut and dry. Rena is obviously not a yandere, no matter how far you stretch the definition. Rena was never shown to be in a romantic relationship in the main canon arcs, not even a one-sided love. The things that drive her to violence were mostly just related to her familial problems and a lack of trust in her friends. I think there's just one big reason why she's confused for a yandere. People who don't know Higurashi have probably just seen the gifs of an anime girl making crazy faces and stabbing people and just think, yup, That's a yandere. The misconception has only been spread further by the explosion of bloody Rena gifs with the release of Higurashi Go. People mislabeling Rena as a yandere is a common pet peeve for Higurashi fans. Anytime you can find someone making that mistake, you can inevitably find a whole bunch of Higurashi fans in the retweets or replies expressing their annoyance, to put it lightly. Please don't harass anyone who makes this mistake, folks. It's all just cartoons on the internet. Now, the second allegation concerns Shion. In fact, in the replies of people pointing out how Rena isn't a yandere, you can sometimes find people pointing out how Shion is right there. Sometimes you'll even find those memes or group photos including both of them. Like with Rena, this is a debate that can be stretched back all the way to Mayakashi Hen, and was perpetuated heavily by Studio Dean's adaptation. For those that have read the visual novel or the manga, you likely know that while she started off resembling a yandere, she fell for Satoshi and her care for him spurred her into violent attacks on the Sonozakis. Her development deepened her motivations and made her realize the error in her ways as the arc progressed. Does this make her qualify as a yandere? Some people would say yes, she's still a yandere. Others would classify her as a deconstruction and disqualify her. Some others would argue that she never would have qualified as a yandere at any point, sometimes citing a lack of possessiveness that defines other characters considered to be yanderes. As for me, I don't know, I feel like the distinction is arbitrary. Love and violence are deeply involved in Shion's story, and yandere isn't a strictly defined term, so everybody's going to have their own take on whether or not Shion actually counts. Maybe you have a better definition than everyone, and will explain who is or who isn't a yandere in the comments. Regardless, it's likely this debate will continue for all eternity.
Live action. Higurashi received a live-action movie adaptation in 2008 by Phantom Film, which primarily adapted Onikukushi Hen. It was translated to Shrill Cries of Summer when it came overseas, and it overall performed terribly. It had bad acting, odd casting choices, wonky editing, and no effort seemingly spent on either set design or costuming. While the Dean anime cut out a lot, barely any of the original story remains in the live-action version. Phantom Film dropped the IP, but it was picked up again by Frontier Works to give it a second go. In 2009, they would adapt Higurashi no Nakakoro ni Chikai, or Shrill Cries Reshuffle as it was translated overseas. This was meant to be a direct sequel, but completely skips Watanagashi Hen, Tatarigoroshi Hen, Mayakashi Hen, and Himatsubushi Hen, going right to Sumihoroboshi Hen for some reason. As you can imagine, this also performed terribly. The IP wouldn't be touched for live action for years until 2016 when Sky Perfect TV picked it up for a TV drama. It ran for a total of 10 episodes, adapting the first 3 question arcs and 2 of the answer arcs, those being Mayakashi and Sumihoroboshi Hen. It was generally received better than the film adaptations, but was still not very good. If you get drunk or if you're with a group of friends, like we were on YandereTotodile stream for the yearly Matsuri event, these can be a fun watch, but otherwise, save your time.
Dai. Previously mentioned on the Iceberg for the song You in Level 1, Dai is a composer for 7th expansion, and the way he joined the company is pretty funny. Although we'll talk more about it later, the original soundtrack for the Higurashi question arcs was entirely royalty-free. Sometime before Kai, Dai reached out to them, criticizing their music choices. Ryukishi replied back flippantly, asking him what kind of music he would make, expecting to receive no answer, and was surprised to find that Dai actually replied with legitimate compositions of his own. He was then hired on the spot. While he's most known for You, he's composed most of the music in Higurashi's answer arcs, and a ton of the soundtrack in Umineko, like Hane, and the ever-iconic Hope.
Urahigu. Urahigu are a set of 24 shorts that came after the release of the Higurashi no Nakukoro ni Kai anime. These shorts seem to be part of a boxed collection for the show. They're all about a minute or less and just consist of a bunch of silly gags. They were never officially subtitled for English, so finding them is a bit difficult. They all used to be available on YouTube until, in a classic copyright move, they were taken down by Frontier Works.
Okonogi. Okonogi, or Tetsuro Konogi as previously mentioned, is the captain of the Mountain Dogs. Some fans may wonder why he has his own entry on the Iceberg, but I'm sure other people know exactly why he's here. You see, in other 7th expansion works, a character named Tetsuro Konogi is also present in Umineko no Nakuro ni as the Yoshirimiya stateholder, and another character named Tetsuro Konogi appears in Sakonia no Nakukoro ni as a military captain. All 3 characters share similar appearances, and all 3 characters have the same blood type and birthday. There's another character that looks identical to Okonogi in Rose Gun Days, named Maurice Monobe, who shares the same birthday and blood type. It became a running joke that was officially acknowledged on Twitter by the 7th expansion, where they encouraged fans to copy Okonogi's face and put it everywhere. While many people seem to suggest this means they all take place in the same universe, Ryuki Shio 7 tends to use similar character designs for a myriad of his works. Mir from Sionia looks like Takano, Amakusa from Umineko looks like Skylark 13, and so on and so forth. Although it wasn't mentioned during the Berncastle section for the sake of not being redundant, the reason for this is that Ryo has stated he likes to think of his characters as actors, like the kind you see in plays or movies, and that seeing similar characters in different roles is just those actors playing a different character.
BT. BT, previously mentioned for being the creator of Renapon and other minigames, was one of the founding members of 7th Expansion. He was an editor, coder, and Ryukishi has stated several times in interviews that BT was a crucial part of his writing. That when he was creating, BT was who he imagined reading. BT was a friend, but he was more like another brother to Ryukishi. In 2009, during the development of Umineko no Nakakoro ni, BT passed away due to an unnamed illness. In a blog post written by Ryukishi, he details how difficult the loss had been for him. He lost one of his brothers, his very first reader, and that he lost his joy to write because BT would never be able to read his works again. Umineko Episode 6 is the first piece of 7th Expansion media ever made without BT's presence. Knowing this can add an extra layer to the tone and thematic focus of the story, especially Episodes 6 and 7, as a reader could interpret it as Ryukishi tried to come to terms and express about how much he misses his friend. May he rest in peace. The franchise we love so much would not be the same without him.
Card Captor Sakura. If you didn't know, Ryukishi is a huge Card Captor Sakura fan, and that has popped up in some of his work. Before working on Higurashi, Ryukishi would do fan cards to the card game Leaf Fight. It would include references to works Ryukishi likes, with some noteworthy examples being Clannad, Air, Mud Love, Tsukahime, and Magical Antique. Common among these references are nods to Clamp's Card Captor Sakura, from Matayo to just holding Sakura's seal on. Later in Watanagachi Hen, we will have Higurashi characters discuss a series known as Card Master Sakura, an obvious nod to Card Captor Sakura, with Rika saying her favorite is Tomio, my favorite Sakura. Kankan.
Ichiro Maebara is Keiichi's father in Higurashi, and at first is introduced to us as being a successful career artist. However, what sort of artist he is never mentioned. Until Totara Goroshi Hen, there is a business meeting at the Maebara household where the people in the meeting suggest Keiichi's dad might be a doujin artist? Like a lewd one? At the very least, it seems he makes paintings that contain adult content. This makes complete sense because he draws Keiichi in a maid outfit excitedly, he takes him to Angel Mort and cites it as a key place to go for inspiration, and in the Higurashi official character guide, Keiichi's father is confirmed to be a part of a doujin circle. While that certainly doesn't confirm or deny whether he draws adult content, given doujin is just self-made content, he is certainly an appreciator of the female form, we'll just say that.
Made in Heaven. Made in Heaven is an attack used by Irie in the series. You see, Irie is a gigantic pervert and has a very open maid fetish. In a perverted monologue in Matsuri Bayashi Hen, Irie calls himself the king of maids, hits a very particular art style change, and belts out Made in Heaven! Made in Heaven is a reference to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 6, Stone Ocean, where the main antagonist Pucci has a stand called Made in Heaven. If you don't know what JoJo or a stand is, look, I haven't got all day, alright? If I disrupt this section to explain JoJo when I already explained Toho earlier, I think Hunter might fire me. To make a very, very long story short, JoJo is a shonen manga with a very distinct art style where characters manifest powers called stands, with names based on American rock songs. In this case, Freddie Mercury's Made in Heaven. Sound weird? Good. That's a part of why JoJo kicks ass. The art style change in pose is a clear indicator that this is a JoJo reference. Made to be a pun because Irie loves Maid so much. 2 years after this happened in Matsuri Bayashi, the Irietachi no Gyakushu CD was released. As another silly CD with character songs, it is a song for Chie about curry, a song for Akasaka about guns, and a song for Irie about his intense love of maids. The song itself is called Heaven's Door, once again referencing a stand from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, in this case, Rohan's Heaven's Door, named after the Bob Dylan song. It's a song for a visual novel that references a manga that references a song. We're reaching uncharted levels of referencing stuff here. Just like the Tomitake song, this song was sung by the voice actor for Irie, Toshihiko Seki. This attack of his is referenced several times in the song. Take a listen. Stairway to heaven, made in heaven. The lyrics will also occasionally reference the American rock songs that JoJo takes inspiration from too. Made in Heaven works both as a pun and a reference, and the lyrics mention Heaven's Door a couple of times too. One chorus has Irie sing the words Stairway to Heaven in English, which, outside of a small retcon, isn't a JoJo stand, so it's probably referencing the Led Zeppelin song from 1971. It's like referenceception. With both the Tomitake song and this one, those CDs really do have a critical mass of bangers hidden in them. The attack from Irie would become iconic to other members of the Soul Brothers, and they cite it as the most powerful move in their group, whatever the hell that means.
Console ports. Although it was already briefly touched on, Higurashi has received a few console ports, all of which have original arcs that are exclusive to the consoles. These arcs are the following: Tarima Washihen, or the rotation chapter, is a combination of Onikakushihen and Watanagashi-hen. When Keiichi learns things that usually make him get stressed and lead to him going insane in Onikakushihen, they don't stress him out at all. And Taraima, think kind of like the first arc in Higurashi Go. Although instead of Rena going crazy like she did in Higurashi Go, Shion appears and then it plays out similarly to Watanagashi-hen. Tsukio Toshi-hen, or the Exorcism chapter, is a retelling of Tatsuragoshi, where Rena, Keiichi, and Shion plot to kill Teppei together. As you can imagine, things don't pan out super well. Sumetsushi-hen, or the Dai Diffusion chapter, an extra chapter that takes place in Okonomiya, follows Natsumi Kimiyoshi after she finds out that her hometown of Hinamizawa has received a catastrophic disaster. Kageboshi-hen, or the Shadow Spinning chapter, is an extra chapter that details Akasaka and Oishi joining forces with a police captain named Tomoe to get to the bottom of the Great Hinamizawa disaster. Toki Hogushi-hen, or the Unraveling chapter, is an extra arc that follows Tomoe and Mina's exploration of a mysterious death in the Ibaraki prefecture. Yuigoshi-hen, or the Beyond Midnight chapter, was originally made as a manga arc, but later was adapted into a console-ported arc. It follows people from the cast, although mainly Mion Sonozaki, as they return back to Hinamizawa 20 years after the Great Hinamizawa disaster. Kodo Hogushi-hen, or the Congratulating chapter, is a prequel to the main series following Hanyu's backstory. Of course, there's also Miyatsukushi Omote and Ura, which we talked about earlier, as alternatives to Matsuri Bayashi-hen. And finally, Haji Sarashi-hen, or the Embarrassment chapter, the previously mentioned arc where Keiichi and the Soul Brothers fight off the girls from trying to see his fur seal. I really don't like this one.
Go and Sotsu. Go and Sotsu refer to the anime original Higurashi seasons made by Studio Passion, which basically function as season 4 and 5 of the franchise. They are this far down because it seems a good amount of people in the fandom are still gradually finding out about their existence, or it could be because many people don't know that Go and Sotsu are not a remake, they're actually sequels. If you happen to be in that boat, please do make sure to watch or read the original series before watching these.
St. Lucia Academy. St. Lucia Academy is a private all-girls Christian boarding school that Shion attends in the main series. Although we don't know the specifics, she seems to really hate the place. We started to see a glimpse of maybe why in the manga arc Utsutsukowashi, but that was cancelled after only 3 chapters, so we'll never really know how bad it was for her. Later on in Go and Sotsu, Satoko and Rika attend the school, and we get a better idea of why Shion may not have liked it. If you're not prim and proper, you won't be as popular socially, as many of the girls are from richer, well-off families. And while the Furude and Sonozaki families are powerful in Hinamizawa, that's still a country bumpkin village. If you don't keep up with your very intensive studies, you'll fall behind quickly. If you're doing too poorly in discipline or grades, you get put in basically an on-campus prison. The school reappears in Umineko no Nakakoro ni. Inja Ushiromiya attends it, and even with her wealthy upbringing, she's a frequent target of bullying. Okay, let's try this again. Inja Ushiromiya attends it, and even with her wealthy upbringing, she's a frequent target of bullying. Although it is regarding circumstances related to Umineko that have left her family in shambles, so maybe they're all just classist bullies?
Unit 731. Unit 731 refers to a real-life biological and chemical weapons subdivision of the Imperial Japanese military. Unit 731 lately has become infamous as more information's come out detailing some of the horrific trials and human experimentation and torture this group would perform. Cases of human vivisection, or live dissections and experimentation, using live Chinese and Russian prisoners as bomb and bayonet practice dummies, infecting villages with bubonic plague just to see what happens, among many other horrific and unspeakable acts would be what they are known for. Unit 731 appears not just by name, but some incidents or references and parallels in Higurashi, such as the Tokyo Division and their development of H173, really subtle with the numbers there. These would be similar to the aforementioned bubonic plague research and the development of disease as a weapon. Another character in Higurashi, Sohei Sonozaki, the husband of Oreo and grandfather to Mion and Shion, would have a job disposing of infected and experimented corpses from Unit 731, some of which would become rumored to be used as a, quote, meat substitute for Imperial soldiers, which has somewhat truth to it, and I'll delve into that more in the next tier. The inclusion of the atrocities and war crimes of Imperial Japan, like Unit 731, is a really touchy subject. The Japanese government's been very flip-floppy when it comes to accepting and acknowledging the disgusting acts that would happen throughout the war and the occupation of China and Korea. Ryukishi leaving these mentions in the story of Higurashi is a means of really quite rare social commentary used to discuss and criticize the way Japan has and continues to handle talk of these incidents in original releases, even if later re-releases would censor mentions by name of Unit 731, which at least can be modded right back into the game.
Kokoriyashi. Although it was briefly mentioned earlier in this layer, Kokoriyashi Hen, or the Heart Healing Chapter, is a manga-exclusive arc set after Matsuri Bayashi Hen. After Rika has successfully lived past the events of June 1983, she doesn't really know what to do with herself. Hell, she doesn't even know how to act like a kid and properly grow up. It's like Sai Koroshi Hen, but if it was sweet. The arc consists of her beginning to relearn what it's like to live, as well as exploring her mother-daughter relationship with Hanyu in some incredibly sweet and wholesome moments, especially the ending of the arc. I know some of you out there don't like Hanyu or wish she did more in the main series, and that's totally fair, but you should read this so you can understand why Rika loves Hanyu so much. Plus, it's really great just to finally see our characters, well, be themselves. They don't have to solve any greater mystery or worry about getting killed. They can just be kids.
Royalty-free soundtrack. As was previously discussed during the entry about Dai, the question arcs in the visual novel were mostly royalty-free music. If it wasn't clear by the backdrops being real photos with filters on them, charming as those may be, the budget at first for the series was very small. The royalty-free songs were mostly by creators like Aijia and Koji Kusanagi. Some of these royalty-free tracks are Paris no Go-Go, which I'm sure all of you will immediately recognize, Helter Skelter, and Orange Colored in Time. Crazy to think that such amazingly recognizable tracks are also completely free to use.
Daybreak. It was talked about way back in Layer 1, but yes, Higurashi has a fighting game called Daybreak. It was made out of house by Twilight Frontier and written by Ryukishi 07, released back in 2006 to the PC and later to the Sony PlayStation Portable. The story of this game is that everyone in the cast... I need to pause because I have been tripping the fuck over this word. Once the fucking already began. Once the Magatama of Furarazu. What the fuck? The Magatama of Furarazu. Yeah, got it! An ancient artifact that can bring love to whichever individuals hold it. The Horny Stones. It's the Horny Stones. The game includes the entire main cast of Higurashi, along with some characters you might not expect, like Chie, Akane, and Kasai. It would receive an updated version in 2007 known as Higurashi Daybreak Kai, and that would introduce characters like Hanyu and Natsume. Each character has weapons that they either used in the game or that would fit their character. For example, Keiichi uses Satoshi's bat, and the shovel he used to bury Teppei. Shion uses a modded stun gun, and the whip she used to beat Oreo. Meanwhile, my boy Akasaka is armed with the most dangerous weapon of them all. my hands. And Hanyu? Well, Hanyu decided to take a page out of Dio's book and... Its story was also adapted as a manga, an anime OVA, and a visual novel arc titled Higurashi Hen, or The Daybreaking Chapter. For those wondering, it was only released in Japan on PC and PSP. There's no official way to play this game in English. In fact, there's not really much of an official way to play the game in general right now. The game was never released on any digital storefronts, and it's not currently being sold physically, so it's technically abandonware. Wink. Fortunately, thanks to the efforts of the Higurashi Daybreak translation team, it is possible to enjoy the PC versions of Daybreak and Daybreak Kai in partial English. I was even able to get it running on Linux, with a bit of patience of course. So, any of our Steam Deck viewers out there, you got something you could try out. One last thing I want to note here that surprised me is that although the Higurashi Daybreak Portable Mega Edition does have an entry on retro achievements, no one's bothered to actually make achievements for it, or an English patch for that matter. The same goes for Higurashi John, which I'm sure that's a whole different entry, but if anyone who has the capability to either make an English patch for that version, or to make some achievements for that version, let me know if you do that, because I will gladly cover it if you do.
Me! Before we get into this one, I just want to preface that the Google Translate thing is not translating the names well enough, so I am going to attempt them, and I apologise if I get them horrendously wrong. Blame Hunter. Higurashi no Naku Koro ni was a mobile gacha game developed by Smileaxe and written by both Ryugashi and Kiichi Kano. It was released a month before Higurashi Go aired and has its own story that follows Kazuo Kimiyoshi as she revisits Hinamizawa 10 years after the Great Disaster. She's sent back in time to June of 1983 by Tamuro Hime no Makoto to fight monsters. That's the most confusing bit of this whole paragraph, but whatever. Here she meets, I know this one, Miyuki Akasaka and Nao Hotani as they join together to find out about the mysterious past of Hinamizawa. The gameplay is simple enough. Spend in-game currency to build up various characters and teams to fight Tsukiyami, monsters created by fragments. The game has a lot of events with tons of unique artwork, some good, some bad, some inappropriate, and the craziest thing about the whole thing is the amount of crossovers that they had. This video is long enough without me listing all of them, so here's a select few, and you're permitted to laugh at me every time I mispronounce one. Sanrio, Sinful Gear, Signs Gate, Kanad, twice, Umineko, twice, the only one that makes sense, Canon, Senrin Kagura, Shin Iki Tusan, School Days, and the Queen herself, Haruhi Suzumiya, long may she reign. Despite all this, Me never got a global release. In fact, the game would entirely shut down in February of 2025, and there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth from everyone who wasted all that time playing this gacha game. Oh well, moving on.
My friends in the comments, let me know if I was too lenient on Crewe. I was going to be a little bit harder on him with his pronunciations, but the thing is, I'm also very infamous for having the worst pronunciations ever. So who am I to judge the guy? Going on to layer 3. And now, going a bit deeper to level 3. When a host experiences a large amount of mental anguish, whether it's emotional, physical, or mental, they will move to the next stage of the syndrome. Level 3. Here, Hinamizawa syndrome is no longer dormant. Now the mental state of the host will begin to deteriorate, leading to them becoming more paranoid, more susceptible to stress, and overall mentally and emotionally unstable. Level 3 of this iceberg is where things start to get a bit niche. While much like the previous levels, some of you will know the entries to this iceberg layer, I would dare to say that half of you will probably be completely unfamiliar with most of them. Tokyo Subway Sarin Attack. The Tokyo Subway Sarin Attack refers to a real-life event where members of the Shinrikyo cult committed a domestic chemical terrorist attack on the Tokyo Metro in 1995. What started off as a yoga and meditation class in 1984, Shinrikyo evolved into a very violent group as the years progressed. In 1989, the cult leader Shoko Asahana made the group's main mission a doctrine called POA, which stated it was okay to commit murder if it meant saving someone at risk of bad karma from furthering their karma into an eternity in hell. Shortly around when this happened, 6 members of the group would murder a man and his family, being dubbed the Murder of Satsumi Sakamoto. The group would attempt to receive political power and began researching and building many bio and chemical weapons. After multiple failed runs in office, they resorted back to violence in 1992, creating a lot of sarin, phosgene, and VX. For context, these are all incredibly toxic gases. The cult would attempt many public assassinations between 1993 and 1994, with one of them unfortunately being successful. Then, in 1995, they attempted 2 assassinations in Tokyo between January and February before attacking 3 lines of the Tokyo Metro train system in March during rush hour. Their attack would kill 13 people, severely injure 50, and temporarily affect 1,000 other people, making it one of the biggest acts of domestic terrorism alongside the Kyoto Animation arson attack. May those who lost their lives rest in peace. The reason this is on this iceberg is the events, although never confirmed, seem to have inspired the Tokyo organization and the Great Hinamizawa disaster. Tokyo, much like Shinryoko, was an organization that researched and explored bioweapons, although they did these for very different reasons. The Great Hinamizawa disaster was caused by applications of a type of gas, and scenes in Yakusamashi-hen feel eerily similar to photos of the Tokyo gas attacks after it happened.
Yes, Hinamizawa. Yes, Hinamizawa is a line from the character song combination of Keiichi and Oishi, titled Keiichi plus Oishi no Uwasa no Jikenbo ABC, often shortened to just Jikenbo ABC or Keiichi and Oishi's Notorious Incident Report ABC in English. This song was released in 2007 on the Higurashi no Nakakura ni Character CD Volume 1 alongside Ega Happy Place, a character song for Rena-Rena. Jikenbo is a rap-like rendition of the events of Onikakushi-hen, sung by Keiichi Seiyu, Soichiro Hoshi, and Oishi Seiyu, Shafuran. Yes, Hinamizawa refers to the recurring chorus of the song. It was translated on YouTube by Jorge Murta. I'll play a chorus for you now.
Do you know Yashu-sama? Yes, Hinamizawa. I kill you, you kill me. No, Hinamizawa.
Human meat. Circling back to the talk of Unit 731 on the previous layer, in Watanagashi, Shion tells a story to Keiichi and Rena about how her grandfather Sohei had to find a way to get rid of infected human corpses. His supposed solutions? He turned the corpses into meat substitutes, canned them up, and sent them out to soldiers during World War II. This turned into a surprisingly prosperous business for him, putting the Sonozakis as the main house of the village and helping them revitalize Hinamizawa. Although in Mayakashi, she claims this was stuff she just heard from Takano. However, that's not necessarily true, as the first time she had heard it was from Kasai, who used to tease her about there being human flesh in those cans, which is why she does not like canned food. It's led to her having a lifelong fear of canned meat and has led to community speculation for years on if the Sonozakis actually sold canned human meat or not. Cannibalism still is relevant to the World War II era, and while despite the many atrocities Unit 731 would commit, canning humans for the sake of getting rid of the infected and experimented victims is not something proven, at least not yet. However, there is one recorded instance in September of 1944 on the island of Chichijima. 9 US pilots would attempt to escape their planes after being shot down during bombing raids. 8 airmen would end up captured, with 1 escaping, and we'll get to who escaped later. But these 8 men would end up beaten, tortured, and executed under orders by Lieutenant General Yoshio Tachibana. The Imperial Japanese armies also were incredibly poorly supplied and maintained. That also, under these orders, 4 of the killed airmen would end up being used as food for soldiers on the island. After the war, the commanding officers and those involved in the executions of the US airmen would end up tried, and 4 officers, including Tachibana, were found guilty and hanged. But circling back to the question of who was the one pilot to escape, I shit you not, it is future President George H.W. Bush. Also, if you recall, in an earlier Higurashi timeline video by Hunter, he goes over part of a fan-made anthology manga compilation, including the arc Katari Banashi, or The Little Demon. To re-summarize quickly, this arc features an American bomber pilot who's shot down and escaped his plane to be taken care of by 2 children from Hinamizawa. And spoilers, they betray him and he becomes a victim of the Watanagashi, which may or may not involve his being cannibalized at this time. It's unclear exactly how far this period of Hinamizawa is willing to go back to their demon-eating roots, which this ends up being a really eerily similar parallel and possibly inspiration from the Chichijima incident.
Last Period cameo. Last Period was a free-to-play gacha game released from mobile devices in May of 2016. In 2017, the game announced a Higurashi collaboration, where players could roll for members of the game club in Hanyu. Alongside them came a maid outfit skin for Rena, based off the one she wore in Batsukoishi Hen, and an original story inspired by Higurashi, called Rineshi Hen, or the Reincarnating Chapter, which featured Oishi and Tomitake. Last Period received an anime adaptation in 2018, and it's a cute little thing. The entire show is super lighthearted and goofy, and is mostly just focused on silly adventures with the main cast of 4. One of them, Choco, is even voiced by Rika's voice actress, Yukari Tamura, and has a speech quirk of umyu to boot. It's incredibly meta and tongue-in-cheek, with characters commenting on gacha mechanics, enemy levels, and star rarities. Now, a gacha game getting an anime adaptation is nothing unusual. Neither are gacha games doing collaborations. What is unusual is a gacha game keeping a collaboration in the adaptation. Last Period's 3rd episode is titled Sono Higurashi, and it's about, well, a Higurashi collaboration. Rika herself plays a minor role, serving as a sort of antagonist. Since they already had Yukari Tamura voicing Choco, I guess they must have just asked her to record a few lines as Rika. The episode follows the party investigating a haunted mansion on order of the town's mayor. As it turns out, the mayor's brother was orchestrating a whole Scooby-Doo style plot to make it seem like the town's beloved mansion was haunted, in order to stop the mayor from tearing it down and building a Higurashi theme park on top of it. When the mayor finds out, he sicks his army of Higurashi collab characters on the party, including his 5-star Rika. The protagonists are saved by a group of recurring Team Rocket-style villains called Wise Man, who show up with their own 5-star Rena unit. Unwilling to fight each other, the Higurashi characters all throw down their weapons, saying how they overcame violence like that before, referencing Matsuri Bayashi. With no army to stop the party, the protagonists defeat the mayor and stop the mansion from being destroyed. The episode doesn't hold back on its references, including things like the Nilo Hagi, and even the Dean anime's directorial quirks, like the triple zoom and wide shots with heavy cicada noises. They even parody the iconic Dean eye catch. When the mayor talks about building the theme park, he talks to the real-life Last Period developers, and if that wasn't wild enough, the developers invite Ryukishi himself as a cameo too. Even the general plot of the episode feels like an homage to Higurashi. It's a town defending its autonomy in the face of an administration who wants to tear down its history and replace it with new construction. Sound familiar? Some of my favorite details include the weapons they give to each of the Higurashi collab characters, including, hilariously, giving Rika the infamous chair. Rika also has a funny moment with Choco where they both seem to realize they have the same seiyuu and repeat each other's vocal quirks, which is pretty cute. Unfortunately, this collab would never come back around in-game, as Last Period ended service in 2022. I'll forever appreciate this cameo, though. Back when this episode first aired, I caught wind of it online and invited Loki over. I put on the first episode and then this one right afterwards, and I absolutely refused to tell them any context. Rika showing up out of nowhere was a total jump scare, and I'll forever remember them freaking the fuck out. Good times.
Character ages. Given the intense and often traumatic things that the characters experience in Higurashi, many people assume that the main cast is older than they really are. However, they're actually younger than you might expect. Rena is confirmed by Ryukishi07 in an interview to be 13, with her turning 14 the following month in July. Mion and Xian are supposed to be in middle school, around the ages of 14, making Keiichi similarly around 14. Satoko and Rika are supposed to be 6th graders, meaning they're around 11 years old. Leave it to Ryukishi07 to create a little puzzle out of this too.
Hey, Hunter hopping in here because I wanted to say that knowing their confirmed ages makes the behavior of some of you on the Higurashi subreddit very weird. They're confirmed children. It also, in hindsight, makes a lot of lewd or sexual merchandise of the cast come off as incredibly creepy. Not only are they traumatized to shit in the series, but they're canonical children. Why are we making body pillows of kids? Anyways, just wanted to pop in and get this off my chest really quickly. Please don't lewd minors. Guys, some of the stuff that I see on the Higurashi subreddit is so degenerate, and it honestly makes me feel bad that I'm a Higurashi fan. Like, we have Chie, we have Mion's mom, we have Takano. There are some fine, hot women in the series that are of age, especially Takano. She's a certified baddie. Let's go for people that are adults, guys. Come on. Not the children. So hopefully this Iceberg getting their confirmed ages out there to the wider public will help some of the creepy shit stop. Let's continue on with the Iceberg though.
Oreo's fingernails. The Sonozaki have a lot of traditions, like the head of house and heir having names that contain the character for demon, killing one child if twins are born, tattooing the heir with a demon, and, of course, ripping off fingernails as a way to make restitution. The scene with Shion having to remove 3 of her fingernails in order to atone for Kasai, her uncle, and Satoshi has frequently made its way outside the Higurashi fan space as a sort of shock factor or jump scare. We, of course, know it's not just that. On top of that, in a show of solidarity and respect, Mion also removes her fingernails. But Shion and Mion aren't the only ones who are known to have undergone this torture. Their mother Akane was originally Orio's heir, but she chose to marry her husband instead of the man chosen for her. This was seen as taboo, as the next head of the house needed to have their partner agreed upon by the family. Akane had to rip off some of her fingernails as restitution, and officially Orio disinherited Akane in order to permit the marriage. One would imagine that forcing your kid to rip off their fingernails would result in a no-contact relationship, but we regularly see Akane, and often her husband, at private family meetings. It's clear they have a great relationship, and often spend their free time drinking tea and yapping together. In Mayakashi's epilogue, we learn that, in a parallel to Mion and Shion, Orio actually ripped off her fingernails in solidarity with Akane. All in all, Orio's fingernails are just one small detail of many that showcase her capacity for empathy and change. Sure, the tradition of ripping fingernails off should probably be banned entirely, but let's take it one step at a time for Onibaba.
52. 52 refers to a secret ending of Matsuri-bayashi Hen, the final main chapter of the visual novel. Once someone has beaten the entire game, they can replay it, and if they connect all of the fragments together without breaking one, they unlock a fragment simply titled 52. In this world, the young Tanashi Miyako, who we know as Mio Takano, is visited by an unknown figure who asks her if she wants to live or die. The figure tells her to go home to her parents and that her friend isn't home. Miyako does this, hurrying home, and this results in a perfect world. The figure, whoever it is, calls this fragment an early miracle. Miyoko's parents never get into an accident, so she continues her happy life instead of getting adopted by Takano. Thus, the Irie clinic is never established, Rika's family is never killed, and Oyashiro-sama's curse would never exist quite like it did in other fragments. This was meant to give Takano a proper, happy ending. It also showcases that this person that we come to know as Frederica Berncastle is a god, or similar to one, and she's going through the sea of fragments having fun by manipulating events, making her own products and worlds. The reason? Well, Ryu tells us at the end. And if I may leave you with one more piece, I leave you the joy of making a product of your own. I have nothing to show for the 4.5 years I spent in college. I simply spent my days without achieving anything. I left no proof that I was even alive during that time. If you feel that regret for this was what drove me to make this work, then I think we can meet again as friends. This is why I leave you this message. I look forward to the day we meet, my friend. The events of Fragment 52 may sound familiar, as it was adapted for a post-credit scene in the end of Higurashi Kai's last episode, although many people aren't aware that this wasn't an anime original scene.
Lena Charlotte Tycoon. Circling back to a character briefly mentioned in Layer 1, Lena Charlotte Tycoon is a character from Final Fantasy V, whose displayed name would be pronounced as Rena in Japanese, with Lena seeming to be the localized name. Ryukishi07 is not secretive about his love for this game, and especially this character. His pen name, Ryukishi07, even comes from the character. 07 can be pronounced as Renana in Japanese, and Ryukishi means Dragon Knight, which is meant to be a reference to the Dragoon job in Final Fantasy. Quick crash course for those who may not speak Final Fantasy. Characters throughout the series can take on different combat roles. In Final Fantasy V's case, these are referred to directly as jobs, and any character in the party can be assigned to whatever job the player decides at any point in the game. The Dragoon job in particular focuses on aerial combat, with its primary move being a move called Jump. So what this boils down to is once you unlock the Dragoon job, any character can wear the armor. I think it's pretty clear that's what Ryu must have been doing with I think it's pretty clear that's what Ryu must have been doing with Lena in his playthrough. Because if you combine Ryukishi and Rena together, in Japanese you get Ryukishi07. We talked about it earlier, but to further elaborate on it, Rena started off as a fan rendition of Lena, who as time progressed became a very modified version of Lena. As seen in early artworks of hers, especially in the Leaf Fight booklets, this fan rendition of his wore a very modified version of the Dragoon armor. Eventually, Rena became Rena, and this Dragoon outfit became the Angel War outfit. Crazy how probably the most iconic 07th expansion character originated as fan art of a Final Fantasy that was never originally released internationally. If there's anything to be learned from this, it's that you should definitely go play Final Fantasy V. I personally suggest either the Game Boy Advance version or the Pixel Remaster off Steam. It has one of my favorite battle tracks from the entire series, Battle on the Big Bridge.
Scooby-Doo. Hearing Scooby-Doo may throw some people off. Like, Scooby-Doo? That's like the last thing I think of when I think of Higurashi. How could they possibly be related? Well, as it would turn out, one of the episodes of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated was called When the Cicada Calls, an obvious homage to When the Cicadas Cry, the English translation for Higurashi. The title isn't the only homage though, as the Outcast06 shared on Reddit that Mystery Incorporated has other references to Higurashi throughout its runtime. There's a curse that is noted to bring out the worst in people, similar to Hinamizawa syndrome. There's a cute, small character that turns out to be a kind of a god adjacent to Hanyu, a past character is missing, and someone new is very similar to them, similar to Satoshi and Keiichi. The big bad of the series is someone who is studying a town and something amiss in the town, and the big bad is also responsible for the disappearance of the main character's parents. This is obviously a nod to Takano. They also have an army that feels reminiscent of the Yaimanu. I'm sure there are many more connections, so it's very clear that one of the writers for Mystery Incorporated was a big Higurashi fan.
That one Satoko sprite. Just from the title alone, I'm sure many of you already know what this is referring to. In the very first release of Totari Goroshi Hen, Keiichi finds Satoko passed out in the bathtub of her house. He grabs her and takes her out of the house so they can get her to a doctor. However, Satoko is completely naked, so they give her a towel to cover up. While on their journey to the office, she loses her towel, where a sprite is shown for completely naked and uncensored. And it was very detailed at that too. This is bad, obviously, because she's 11. Thankfully, this decision has been retroactively retracted, and Satoko hence keeps her towel throughout the entirety of this part of the chapter in every future release. I'm not really sure what the thought process was here for why they put this in the game, but I think the entire world is very glad to see that it's no longer a part of it. Unfortunately, since it was included in the base release, you can find this sprite online. It will obviously not be shown in this video.
Ryukishi's parents. Ryukishi's parents are named Ichiro and Aiko, and he would end up naming Keiichi's parents after his own. In a documentary called Akihabara Geeks from 2005, we get to see Ryu and his brother working on the visual novel. His parents are there, and they are very supportive. In fact, they contribute to manufacturing and creating the games. His dad helps out in researching stuff needed for the games. In the documentary, he mentions what sounds like research for what would become Sumihoroboshi Hen. His mom would sort through reviews and gather information so the family knew what worked and what didn't. It's clear that his parents are a very important part of his life, and the Higurashi may not exist without their support. The documentary is also pretty insane because we learned that Onikakushi Hen only sold 50 copies when it was released at Comiket, and that most games stores would not accept it. Little did they know the sprawling franchise it would turn into. And now I can just buy it off a USB stick.
Hyperdimension Neptunia. Hyperdimension Neptunia is an RPG series that parodies the gaming industry. Literally, the setting that most of the games take place in is called Gam Industry. The first few entries in the franchise parodied the console wars of the 2000s, with its characters representing the Wii, Xbox, and PlayStation 3. The titular protagonist, Neptune, is herself based on Sega's cancelled console, the Sega Neptune. It's a really goofy series with a ton of games and adaptations, and one that well-seasoned weebs are at least tangentially aware of, if not just via the occasional viral clip that breaks containment, like this one of Neptune's English VA doing a goofy laugh.
How lewd.
Hunter himself enjoys the OST. As the scope of the series grew, often going to alternate universes and settings, new characters didn't just represent consoles. Instead, the series would feature characters based on specific game studios or franchises. I asked a friend of mine who's a bit deeper into the franchise to show me some of the wilder characters they've created through the years. Check out the character they have to represent the Monster Hunter series, Moru. Her clothes are definitely styled after Monster Hunter's iconic Kirin armor, but themed after the Palicos, Monster Hunter's feline companions. Tsunemi, their character based on Hatsune Miku's Project Diva, sports twin tails, detached sleeves, chunky thigh-high boots, and floating hair accessories based on Miku's own. She even has the PlayStation buttons on her belt, representing the UI in Project Diva. Ryuka, their character representing the Yakuza series, wears an open red business shirt and white jacket to match Kiryu's, with a dragon pattern mimicking the tattoo on his back. Like fighting games? Check out their character based on Street Fighter, clearly themed after Chun-Li, who's wearing bangles with the Hadouken input on them. Or their character named Tekken, who's sporting Jin Kazama's pants and gloves and wears her own name on a silver chain. And their character based on Pac-Man she just makes me laugh. Her name is Lady Walk. Lady Walk. All of the Neptunia parody characters are crafted with such love and attention to detail, and it's a great time just going through the designs and seeing what sort of homages they make. You might see where I'm going with this. Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters released in 2022, featuring a character named Higurashi. Literally just Higurashi. definitely falling under the Tekken school of names. Take a look at her design. In much the same way that their Street Fighter character takes after Chun-Li, Higurashi takes after Rena. She has similar hair and just look at that cleaver, man. Her personality is also styled after Rena, with her having a strong urge to take things home. My favorite detail has gotta be her outfit being a mecha version of the Angel Mort uniform. Maybe it's just because I'm a voice actor on Higurashi Abridged, but that outfit's always looked sharp and chunky to me, and it's hilarious to see it reimagined as a sci-fi combat suit. In the game, Higurashi normally hangs out with Shanghai Alice, a character named after the one-man studio behind the Toho Project series. And she, too, is a hilarious homage, with bows and long sleeves themed after Reimu, and subtle yellow and black colors referencing Marissa. Funnily enough, her friendship with Higurashi is a reference too. As I mentioned in the Surupeton section, the Toho and Higurashi fandoms have a lot of overlap as doujin games. Plus, Toho's creator and Ryukishi are said to be very good friends in real life, even being interviewed together at least once.
The fate of Rika's mother. I didn't forget to record this 1 week before the video goes out. You did! Rika's parents were killed by Mio Takano in June of 1981, fulfilling that year's curse quota. While the anime implies Takano was behind the mum's disappearance, we learn through the visual novels that Takano actually dissected and experimented on her in the E-Ray Clinic's basement while she was still alive. I actually had a quick flick through the manga before recording this, and yikes, what a whinger. And now for some time travel jargon from a Doctor Who fan. I do not apologise, my show is on hiatus, and this is me coping. When Rika first started to loop, it's hinted at that her powers allow her to travel super far back along her own timeline. However, it isn't perfect. She exists in a decaying time loop, meaning each successive loop gives her less and less time to work with, until eventually, as we see in the penultimate arc, she has roughly 2 weeks to work things out. All of this to say that, eventually, over her many years of looping, no matter how hard she tried, she was ultimately unable to save her parents, who never listened to her. In the previously mentioned Psycho Koroshihan, where Rika finds herself in a perfect world, both of her parents are, naturally, still alive. However, in order to return to the fragment she came from, the one that she fought for, she supposedly has to kill her mother. The fate of Rika's mum likely refers to the ambiguous nature as to how Rika got home. Did she kill her mum? Did she find another way back? Or was any of it even real to begin with?
Reiwa manga. The Reiwa manga refers to Higurashi no Nakuko Rei, not to be confused with Higurashi Rei, the stories aren't even remotely related. The manga began serialization in 2022, shortly after Higurashi Sotsu finished airing, and the story is kind of an odd one. Higurashi Rei takes place 35 years after the original events of Higurashi in 2009 during the Reiwa era. The series follows the game club as adults with the kids. The curse of Oyashiro-sama comes back. It's up to Keiichi's son, Keitaro, to discover the truth about what happened. The manga will consist of 3 arcs and was meant to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the franchise. The general conception of the manga doesn't seem very well received.
Ghosts and possessions. While much of Higurashi toes the line of the supernatural with lots of speculation and religious allusions, only really dedicating to a lack of ambiguity in that regard when it comes to Hanyu, this is made a bit more explicit than usual during Yoigoshi-hen. If you don't remember what this is, it's an arc that takes place in the very far future of the series, in a Sumihoraboshi-like fragment. During this arc, ghosts and possessions are very real things that can happen, and do happen. The story seemingly follows an adult Mion, but it turns out it's actually an adult Shion. When Mion passed during the Great Hinamizawa disaster, her ghost latched onto Shion and eventually came to possess her. Yes, you heard that right. The dead spirit of Mion Sonozaki is possessing the body of an adult Shion Sonozaki. We are taking the twin switching to another level here. And indeed, the complicated status of the twins' identities is an important sticking point in the story. Outside of this arc, ghosts and possessions are not mentioned again, but because of Yoigoshi-hen, they are possible canon parts of the series.
Katari Banashi. Katari Banashi-hen is an official anthology series for Higurashi, with every story in it being a piece of fan-submitted content. There were 3 contests held, with the first in 2006 having 10 winners, the second in 2007 having 11, and the third in 2008 having 12. Each contest had around 400 to 600 submissions. The grand prize winner of each contest received 200,000 yen, or around 2,000 USD at the time, along with getting their stories adapted into drama CDs. The winners of these contents had their stories adapted into various different forms, either the aforementioned drama CDs, official manga anthologies, light novels, and one even received its own visual novel. Some of these consist of Little Demon, a story about a World War II pilot crashing into Hinamizawa that you have heard me talk about in the past, and another where Rika wets the bed. Yeah, as you can tell, there's a wide range of serious to potentially fetish content in these anthology stories. The bigger of these titles in the anthology appear later on in this video, so we won't talk about them now to keep things from getting redundant. Although it isn't named as a Katari Banashi book, there is also an anthology compilation for Higurashi Go.
Gods. While Hanyu is the main god that we can see in the series, there are other gods that appear in Higurashi Kamikashi Mashihen, which takes place after Outbreak. Their names are Une and Tamura Hime no Mikoto, or simply just Tamura. The two reappear in Higurashi Mei and seem to have similar powers to Hanyu, but all three gods seem to not get along well. With Kamikashi Mashi and Mei, lore is present, but kind of conflicts with itself, so it's hard to say whether these two are meant to be canon or not.
Basterdswordsmang. And we already talked a few times about this arc in Higurashi 2, so we'll just mention the only thing we haven't talked about yet. Many people may or not know that Basterdswordsmang was originally part of the original Higurashi arc, intended to be an epilogue to Meikashi. It was released with the original Meikashi, but was later scrapped in future versions as it didn't quite fit the tone of the events of Meikashi. In 2006, with Higurashi Rei, was added back in by as its own bonus arc, separate from the main story.
Onigari no Ryuo. The Onigari no Ryuo, known in English as the demon-hunting willow cherry, is an ancient artifact stored in the Furude Shrine. The sword's visual inspiration is the Shichishito, or the seven-branched sword. The Onigari no Ryuo was mentioned in a tip of Matsurubayashi Hen to have allegedly been used to kill a demon lord. Many have speculated that it was used by Oka Furude to kill Hanyu while she was in a demon transformation. In Kotohogushi Hen, it was a normal-looking sword that was infused with Ok, an artificial intelligence of the Ryun being the species that Hanyu comes from. To kill demons, or fellow Ryun, it would enter a three-pronged state. After Oka used it on Hanyu, the sword remained in this state and never returned back to normal. We see the sword used briefly in the manga with a flashback of Oka, but because of how briefly it's mentioned, many speculated this wasn't canon, since the sword only really appeared in a tip. However, the sword briefly reappears in Higurashi Rei, and then becomes much more important during Higurashi Go and Sotsu, as it's said to be capable of killing time loopers, meaning it plays a big part of the final DBZ-esque conflict. It sure couldn't cut down on all that filler though, could it? This sword is also usable by Hanyu in Higurashi Daybreak as one of her two attacks.
Tsukihime. Although it was already briefly mentioned, after reading Type Moon's visual novel Tsukihime, Ryukishi found him so inspired that he set out to make his own visual novel. If Tsukihime didn't exist, there is a really large chance that we may never have gotten Higurashi. So, everyone say thank you, Type Moon!
Mion's immunity. In Higurashi, one consistent factor to every fragment is that Mion never develops any stage past 2 of Hinamizawa syndrome. This has led many fans to speculate if she is merely immune to the syndrome, but in reality she's just very resistant to it. Hinamizawa syndrome requires the host to reach high levels of paranoia or stress before it sets out to get real bad, but Mion is never really stressed or paranoid. Keiichi, Shion, and Rena all tweak out because they think Oyashiro-sama's curse is real and they're trying their best to understand it, while Mion thinks it's purely just coincidence and never once really believes the curse is real. There were a few times she clearly was worried it could exist, but those thoughts don't seem to last too long. She's also an excellent communicator and trusts all her friends dearly. With her trusting friends, knowing the curse isn't real, and having a level head with communication, all of the main reasons she would go up in levels of the syndrome, she doesn't ever. Plus, we also know she isn't immune as she goes level 5 in Higurashi Go and Sotsu after getting injected with H173.
Hanyu's height. Some of you may hear this and think, really? At level 3 we're going to talk about Hanyu's height? Surely there must be an easy answer, right? Well, actually, this might not be as cut and dry as you think. In almost every depiction of Hanyu in the series, her height constantly shifts. In Kai's anime, she's taller than Rika. In the manga, Rika and Hanyu are the same height. In Go, Hanyu is slightly taller than Riku. Why Riku? In Go, Hanyu is slightly taller than Rika again. But then in Sotsu, they're the same height. And while we don't have a height photo, whenever one of those are, Mr. Editor, in Hanyu is supposed to be much taller than she is normally. So, what's going on here? Why is Hanyu a different height in every depiction, while the rest of the cast stay relatively consistent? Personally, outside of animation errors and artists' personal preferences when drawing her, I've always rationalized it as, well, she's a god. She can make herself look however she wants. There are much bigger problems than whether Hanyu can join the NBA or not. And yes, if someone would like to draw Hanyu playing basketball, then go right ahead, that'd be bloody great.
Natsumi. Natsumi Kimiyoshi is a character introduced in the manga-exclusive arc Onisarashi Hen. While the Kimiyoshis are very important to Hinamizawa and its history, she and her family have moved away from the city to Okinomiya, where Natsumi was born and raised. While many people may know her for the manga Onisarashi Hen, she appears in some main arcs of the Higurashi Matsuri port, and she has her own arcs that take place after the Great Hinamizawa disaster, called Sumiutsushi Hen and Kagebushi Hen. These have been nicknamed the Advanced Story. She is in Hinamizawa and shows up during Miyotsukushi Hen Ura, and has a brief appearance in Miyotsukushi Hen Omote. Because of the 3 arcs of her as a focal point, she has a lot of development to her, and those that have read those arcs tend to really like her. However, only a small percentage of the fandom has read the manga, and even less people consume Higurashi through the console arcs. So Natsumi is largely gone unnoticed by the greater part of the fandom. She did start to get some notoriety by being part of May occasionally, while a lot of the attention went to the other Kimiyoshi in that game.
Lake Nyos. Lake Nyos is a real-life lake located in the northwest region of the country of Cameroon. Underneath the water is an inactive volcano, with it residing on the Oku volcanic plain. In 1986, Lake Nyos released a large cloud of carbon dioxide that resulted in the deaths of almost 2,000 people in local villages, and almost 4,000 livestock. This was the first known instance of large-scale asphyxiation or suffocation by lack of oxygen to occur from nature. Although it is never explicitly stated, it is very likely that this disaster at Lake Nyos was what inspired the cover-up for the Great Hinamizawa disaster. We all know that according to the general public, the cause of the Great Hinamizawa disaster was a large emission of CO2 from the Onigafuchi swamp, because they didn't know Takano went on a killing spree. Earlier we talked about how Ryakishi 07's dad had to research things for Tsumi Horoboshi Hen, and one of those things he mentioned was volcanic gas. It's likely that this is what he was researching, especially when considering in the Devil's Script epilogue for Tsumi in the visual novel, Akasaka mentioned Lake Nyos by name. Also, the artificial intelligence Oku in Koto Hogushi Hen lives inside of Onigafuchi swamp. Oku shares a large resemblance to the name Oku, the volcanic plain under Lake Nyos.
Marco Polo Bridge. In yet another case of World War II history bleeding into Higurashi's lore, the Marco Polo Bridge incident, which became the catalyzing incident for the Second Sino-Japanese War, effectively the entire Pacific theater. As the Japanese Empire expanded into northern China and forming the puppet state of Manchukuo, they would continue pressing further and further into China's territory. And this is also already in the midst of the large civil war that's currently going on in China. Japan's territorial expansion halted that civil war and temporarily united China. In July of 1937 in Fengtai, a railway junction near the Marco Polo Bridge, a group of Japanese soldiers demanded that they be allowed into the town of Wangping to search for a soldier who had gone missing. Chinese garrison forces in Wangping would deny them entry and a random gunshot would be heard, and thus both sides would begin fighting. Both governments would deny starting the conflict, but this random spark would ignite war between China and Imperial Japan. Where this ties into Higurashi is that the character of Koizumi, in explaining his past work with Hifumi, Takano's grandfather, that a soldier from Hinamizawa would develop Hinamizawa syndrome, and perhaps it's this one soldier's outburst of paranoia which would spark the Second Sino-Japanese War. And while the government would deny involvement, they'd still use it to justify Japan's invasion of China, along with interest in researching Hinamizawa syndrome for use in biological weapons, as a means to justify and incite future wars and conflict if necessary.
Higurashi Yasumul Jeddah. Higurashi Yasumul Jeddah is the birth name of Hanyu. The name originates from the Ryun species she comes from, which belonged to a different planet and dimension than the current one she now lives in. To enter this world, the one that we're in right now, Ryun at first would simply just enter the portal and travel through. Hanyu is a putus, meaning she was pureblood. Eventually, when their home planet hit its boiling point, every one of the Ryun tried to come through all at once, resulting in them being essentially turned into ghosts. However, they could assimilate into the minds of humans, with the best hosts being human babies. While she was Yasumul Jeddah, she was very different from the Hanyu we know today. Jeddah was an observer of her species, and a warrior that would kill berserk griffs, which are members of her tribe that wouldn't assimilate right, usually because they tried to merge with teens or adults. Instead, their blood would mix and they would lead this person to go insane, very similar to those with Hinamizawa syndrome. The Ryun are pretty complex, and I have a video on the channel that goes into much more detail about Hanyu's lore and her species. There will be a card on screen or a link in the description.
Sadako is colorblind. This refers to a popular fan theory that Sadako and Satoshi are colorblind. It is a long-running joke in the franchise that Sadako struggles to tell the difference between broccoli and cauliflower, and we see in the manga and visual novel of Meikashi Hen that Satoshi struggles to tell the difference between them as well. This is because they both likely have deuteranopia. This affects how people see red and green, usually making people see green as a form of yellow, and it is hereditary, which would explain why they both struggle to make this distinction.
Silent Hill F. Konami's flagship horror series Silent Hill has had a rough decade. 2012 was the last true installment in the franchise. In 2014, the PT fiasco brought a lot of pain for Konami. They brought on Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro, and allegedly even had plans for Junji Ito to work on the new game, using the likeness of Norman Reedus. They got a lot of eyes on them with the incredible playable teaser, which is still talked about as one of the scariest horror games of all time. Then Konami fucked everything up and pissed everyone off, and everyone quit and they canceled everything, and that's how we got Death Stranding. Almost like it was covering its face in shame, Silent Hill stayed silent for almost 10 years afterwards. Konami took down every mention of PT in what could have been an incredible revival for the franchise. They barely released anything, only entering the public eye in 2024 with a 2-hour short game and a remake of Silent Hill 2. That's why the announcement of a proper new game, Silent Hill F, was shocking in 2025. It was a spin-off, sure, but there hadn't been a full-length new Silent Hill game in well over a decade at this point. But how are they going to fill the shoes left by Kojima and Del Toro? Well, by hiring Ryukishi himself to write the story. It's a genius idea, honestly. Bring an experienced and beloved horror writer into the mainstream. In my opinion, it's one of the only ways they could have followed up the PT disaster. Of course, with Ryukishi being Ryukishi, he couldn't help but leave his signature on the game. Many were quick to point out parallels to When They Cry and the plot and its themes. I'll leave things spoiler-free since people really do love Silent Hill F, but you can even see the similarities in setting to Higurashi with the sudden shift to mountainous rural Japan. There are more obvious references too, like this huge Usoda written all over a chalkboard. Also at the school is a testing score list, and, as Redditor Gamer Extraordinaire pointed out, someone shares a very similar name to Maibara Keiichi. Another is that Hinako, Sakuko, and Rinko, the main characters in Silent Hill F, are all likely named after Hina, Saku, and Rin, Jessica's friends in Umineko. And that's really just the beginning of it. People who've looked even further have found things like dam construction, a kid who loves traps, and parallels to Hinamizawa syndrome. But let's not be here all day. Silent Hill F is now widely beloved, even getting a few nominations for the Game Awards, including Best Narrative. It seems to be marking the start of a new golden age for Silent Hill. They're back to making new games, with another spin-off getting announced just a few weeks ago as of writing. Thanks, Ryukishi. But also probably thanks to the remake of Silent Hill 2.
Sorry to pop in on your segment, Ken, but I also just wanted to say to all of you fine folk watching that while this video was being made, a manga has started serialization for Silent Hill F. And Ryukishi07 is confirmed to be directly and heavily involved with its serialization, with the manga being confirmed to be getting a new ending that is separate from the game that Ryukishi wished he could have incorporated into it, kind of adjacent to how the Umineko manga is a further adaptation of the visual novel. I'm very curious to see how the production of this manga will go, and how it will end up being received once it is finished. As of recording this little insert for this bit of the video, the manga has only been ongoing for about a month now, I think, and I only believe it has one chapter, although it is incredibly hard to find. Since it is a Silent Hill property though, the odds of it getting a localization are extremely high, so I'm sure it'll be widely available later on. And now, level 4. Did that shadow just move? Why do my friends look so different? So angry? Do they hate me? This is level 4 of Hinamizawa syndrome. Here, a host will begin to hallucinate and see things that aren't real. They'll begin to think their friends or family, or even their whole town, is out to get them from higher levels of paranoia. When a host has reached this level, there is often very little recovering from it. Level 4 of this iceberg is where only deep-rooted members of the fandom will start to recognize these entries. Many of you will likely have never heard of these before. I know for probably half of them, I myself had never heard of them before. Teppei's design. When Tatori Goroshi Hen was released in 2003, Teppei Hojo actually did not have a sprite. Instead, Teppei received his first design through the manga rendition of Tatori Hen, illustrated by Jiro Suzuki. Ryukishi liked Jiro's design so much that this became the official look for Teppei in future arcs of the story. Jiro also created the design for Yukikazu Kameda of the Okonomiya Titans in the same manga serialization that would be used for his future sprites.
I can't stop laughing at this one while I'm talking. JAVs. In what may be the first live-action adaptation of Higurashi, Total Media Agency, or Studio TMA, so kindly blessed us with 2007's Higurashi ga Naku Koroni, or When the Cicadas Did Not Cry. And believe me, they were not crying in this one, except maybe Mia. So this is a JAV, or Japanese Adult Video, adaptation of Higurashi. Studio TMA is infamous for creating multiple JAV cosplay adaptations of popular series, including Code Geass, Evangelion, Haruhi Suzumiya, Lucky Star, and even more modern series today like Demon Slayer and ReZero. How they can work around copyright like this is technically they could be considered doujinshi, or fan-made, and also in this case, fan-made Arrow cosplay material, while also just changing just barely enough to be considered different, including certain character names. Is it technically illegal and breaking copyright? Yes, but yet doujinshi still flourishes as companies see it as basically free advertising and a sign of appreciation of their work, with some companies and groups like 7th Expansion adopting just don't claim it to be ours and we're good policies. What's also interesting about this, aside from the expected bad acting and effects, is the use of the visual novel's OST tracks at points, which makes scenes really kind of awkward sometimes. But with no subtitles and very little Japanese fluency, and I was not gonna make my fluent friend watch this with me, I could only go off of what I could vaguely understand, which is that this is just Onikakushi set in a crack house that surely no longer exists, cause god, it looks like shit. The paint is literally peeling from the walls and floors, and oh my god, the grandma couch. Reading this script is giving me flashbacks to certain scenes with Rena and Keiichi, and it's just, oh my god. And all the characters have their last names changed. There is no Takano, but Tomatake and Oishi are here. Watsunagashi doesn't seem to be mentioned. The school either isn't a thing, or I can't tell, because everything is filmed in Keiichi's crack house and the surrounding farmland in the woods. But there is this random-ass guy for a split second at least. I don't know him, but you go, man. There is also a separate JAV from 2010 by Studio Max-A, Miko no Osoko ga Nureru Koroni, or When the Shrine Maiden Gets Wet, which does not adapt any arc in particular, but is centered around Hanyu.
Otaka Clinic. In the very first release of Onikakuchi Hen, the Irie Clinic was actually called the Otaka Clinic. Later it was changed to the Irie Clinic, as many people mistook Otaka for Takano because of them having similar kanji.
Voice of Rika's mother. At one point, Rika's mom in Sakuroshi Hen was actually voiced by Yukari Tamura, the seiyuu for Rika Furune.
ここ数日、気持ちのいい晴れの日が続いて、気分がいいわね。
This was later changed, probably because it was confusing, to Sayaka Ohara, who is the seiyuu for Beatrice from Umineko no Naku Koroni. Also, while we're mentioning them, Rika's mom and dad are both never given canonical names.
Rie Takahashi. Rie Takahashi is a popular seiyuu known for playing Emilia in ReZero, Megumin in Konosuba, and Enna from Eurocamp. Her lustrous career actually started because in middle school she was so inspired by Satoshi Hojo that she decided to look into the field. That's right, the iconic voice for Megumin and Emilia may have never gotten a job if it weren't for Satoshi. She was later able to bring this inspiration full circle by voicing now Hutani in the gacha game Higurashi Mei.
Aliens. The idea that aliens were behind everything was originally just a crackpot theory from Rena and Sumi Horiboshihen that she talked about while suffering from Hinamizawa syndrome and beating the shit out of me on. Little did we know that, in a way, she was actually kind of right. As previously mentioned in Kotohogushihen, the Ryun are beings from a different dimension that integrate and assimilate their consciences into human bodies. It was the Ryun appearance in our world that gave us Hanyu and likely Hinamizawa syndrome. That's the quote-unquote scientific reason why Hanyu exists. The Ryun aren't from Earth, have a whole bunch of sci-fi technology that they use to cross dimensions, and invade the planet. For all intents and purposes, these guys are aliens. So was Rena right? Kotohogushihen being canon is still widely debated, so really it's anyone's call, but it's still kinda insane that through this one explanation, the entire series is caused by aliens. Go figure.
Butterfly Dream. One of the stories submitted for Katari Banashihen was called Butterfly Dream, Endless Nightmare, created by Soichiro. In it, Rika goes to an alternate world after dying in the Matsurubayashihen fragment. It's meant to be a parallel to Saikoroshihen, which was a dream of a perfect world, with this being the total opposite. In it, Satoko has been trapped in the house of Tepehojo for a long time, Rena is violent and vulgar, Shion was killed at birth because of the no twins rule in the Sonozaki family, Keiichi never came to the village, Takano is actually a victim of Hinamizawa syndrome, and the Cotton Drifting Festival has reverted to old traditions of sacrifice, with Hanyu being a bloodthirsty demon instead of a shy god. Then she takes her own life to bring Rika back to the Matsurubayashihen fragment. She tells her friends about the crazy dream she's had and goes back to sleep, only to wake up again in the butterfly dream. She is dying in this fragment and is struggling to remember her friends at the game club. The manga ends with Rika stating, "I do not know whether I am a man dreaming I was a butterfly, or whether I am a butterfly dreaming I was a man." This is a reference to the philosophical question posed by Zhuangzhou's book, Zhuangzhe, released in the Warring States period of ancient China. In it, he detailed a story called The Butterfly Dream, where a man fell asleep and dreamt he was a butterfly, pondering the exact same question upon his awakening. This manga is a rough 50 pages that are meant to leave the reader questioning if Rika is living in her ideal world, or is just dreaming of it. It's certainly an interesting concept, and I think the reference is one that fits Higurashi tonally pretty well, but I personally find it a bit much after Matsurubayashi. Just let her rest already.
Stabbing incident. In September of 2007, there would end up being 2 separate axe murder attempts committed by youth that would lead Higurashi Kai's 12th episode to be delayed upon air, along with a certain other series, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, on September 18th in the Kyoto Prefecture, a 16-year-old girl would purchase an axe, change into a black dress, and then kill her police sergeant father while he was sleeping, and then being found in the same bloody dress and admitting to the crime while taken into custody. Then a week later, a 16-year-old boy would end up trying to kill his father in the Nagano Prefecture, which, unrelated, and we'll show a map for this, is near the Gifu Prefecture where Shirakawa was located, and is obviously the setting for Higurashi. His dad would miraculously survive despite having various slashes that did end up hitting bone. Multiple TV stations would postpone Higurashi Kai for the first week, but some would resume air the following week despite the second murder attempt. Square Enix, who published the original Higurashi manga, would also reportedly issue recalls of Nata, or the axe that Rena uses, shaped bookmarks that were used to promote the manga. Where these incidents particularly interest me is in talking of another visual novel series turned anime airing the same year. My beloved and publicly maligned School Days. If you're familiar with mid to late 2000s anime memes and internet culture, you've probably heard the link between this. But the much infamous finale of School Days, where Makoto would face retribution for his sins, was set to air the same week as that first murder case with the young girl and her father. And due to the similar nature of the crime and out of respect to viewers, the finale would instead be replaced with B-roll and nature stock footage. One of the clips would feature a Norwegian vessel of good quality, to which a 4chaner would comment simply, "nice boat." And thus those 2 words would be forever linked to School Days, itself being referenced many other times in other games and anime. And with Higurashi Mei's many collaborations, Higurashi and School Days, 2 of my favorite visual novel anime franchises, would officially collaborate and provide many interesting story details and artwork. If you guys aren't familiar with School Days and its many adaptations, go check out Lexa's initial video on the series. I've gotten to talk to them a little bit back when I first started streaming the School Days VN on my Twitch, and we talked about sort of our thoughts and opinions on the similarities between Higurashi and School Days, as they're also a fan of both series.
Rika Hanyu Swap. As we mentioned earlier in the Iceberg, the 2010 re-release of Miyotsukushi and Higurashi Kizuna contained a plot twist where Hanyu was disguised as Rika for the entirety of the arc, and Rika was trapped in the storehouse. This was an updated version of the 2007 release of Miyotsukushi that also included chapters to conclude the Advanced story, which if you recall is the name for the arcs that star Natsumi, which confused a lot of readers. Due to all the controversy, the arc was split into two with future releases. Miyotsukushi Omote, which contains the arc with the plot twist, and Miyotsukushi Ura, which focuses solely on the advanced story chapters. Many people recommend reading the original 2007 release rather than the 2010 version or Omote in order to avoid the plot twist altogether, but it's ultimately up to personal taste.
Seiya Numata. Seiya Numata was one of many keyframe animators for Fullmetal Alchemist, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and Hellgirl 2 Mirrors. A keyframe animator means that his animation formed the keyframes and certain foundational scenes of things he worked on. He was also a key animator for other popular anime, like the classroom fight in Toradora, Yuri shooting the TVs in Angel Beats, and various scenes in Gurren Lagann. He's on this iceberg because he was the animation director for a bulk of the 2006 anime series, and sole animator of the fight between Keiichi and Rena on the roof in Sumihoroboshi Hen, as well as various scenes of Shion's freakouts in Miyakashi Hen. Chances are, when scenes in the first season of the Dean anime look very fluid and full of life, or have really silly distorted faces, you can probably assume he was responsible for them. For better and for worse, the Higurashi face has this guy to thank for catching on.
Rika is Hanyu's daughter. Rika Furude is widely known to be the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama throughout the series, but they aren't talking about Hanyu when they say that. The person Rika is actually a reincarnation of Izouku Furude, who we see in various pieces of the series, but is predominantly seen in Kotohogushi Hen. The resemblance between the two is immediately clear, since they look identical. It is because of her being a reincarnation that she's able to see Hanyu, as in Kotohogushi Hen, the only person that can see Hanyu after she dies is Oka.
Kimigabuchi. Kimigabuchi refers to Studio Kimigabuchi, a doujin circle that's made various adult media over the years, two of which are short and, that. They unfortunately seem to be very popular among certain parts of the fanbase. The studio's third and last installment for Higurashi doujin, on the other hand, is 150 pages long, is a retelling of Minagoroshi Hen called Yoku-Nisan. Here, Keiichi never came to the village. Instead, Satoshi lives in Hinamizawa alone, and Satoko is adopted into the Mayabara family. While the first few pages contain some dirty dancing among Satoshi and Shion, the rest of the story follows the heartbreaking sacrifices of the game club to help Rika escape in Minagoroshi. At the end, after Rena, Shion, and Mion have died, Satoshi manages to get through to Takano and she decides to cancel their mission. However, since they're too far in, Okanogi and the Mountain Dogs want to go through with Manual 34. They go to shoot and kill Takano, but Satoshi jumps in front of the bullet for her, saving her life. In his dying moments, he sees Satoko. Rika begs for Hanyu to kill everyone, and shockingly, Takano embraces Rika, telling her to stop relying on Oyashiro and to trust her, then tells her to run as she sacrifices her life for Rika. Rika jumps off a cliff and survives, with Akasaka and the Okonomiya police catching up to and capturing the Mountain Dogs. Rika survives in this fragment and is also adopted by the Mayabara family. It's shockingly powerful considering Rika manages to survive in this arc at the sacrifice of multiple of her friends. And it's insane to think this level of emotion and heart comes alongside at least 4 pages of adult content and the other pieces of the studio's work.
Akasaka's design. This may come as a surprise to some of you. In the afterword of the 4th volume for Matsuri Bayashi Hen, Ryukishi let slip that Akasaka is actually a self-insert for none other than himself. This is pretty interesting given that ultimately he is the one that saves the day in the end, but it makes much more sense when you consider that at the end of Himatsubushi Hen, Oishin and him write a book together called Higurashi no Nakukoru ni.
Utsutsu Koishi. Utsutsu Koishi Hen, or the reality-breaking chapter, was mentioned earlier in the Iceberg briefly. It was meant to be a prequel to the main story following Shion Sonozaki and Mizuho Kosaka at St. Lucia, who witnessed a horrific incident at school. However, for reasons unknown, the manga was quickly cancelled after only 3 chapters were released. Due to how little it ran, no one is quite sure what the story of this manga was trying to tell was going to be, and the unfortunate truth is that we'll never know what was going to come from Utsutsu Koishi Hen.
Drama CD VAs. The original releases of all 8 core arcs didn't have any voice acting in them. In 2005, 3 years after the release of Onikakashi Hen, Ryukishi 07 would make the Onikakashi Hen drama CD. It would feature artwork made by himself and a cast of voice actors that were all hand-picked by him. This was the first time the cast ever played their characters, and there are some differences between how they sound here and in the versions of the characters we're familiar with. We'll talk a little bit more about one of those later on. With the drama CD in particular, many of the cast voices were actually different compared to what they are today. This information is thanks to the creator of the Iceberg, who kind of talked us through their knowledge on the subject. This is a weirdly deep rabbit hole, by the way. For example, instead of Daisuke Ono playing Akasaka, he's instead voiced in the drama CD by Takehiro Koyasu, who's most known for voicing Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Zeke from Attack on Titan, Shinsuke from Gintama, and Roswell from Re:Zero. Weirdly, Takehiro returned to reprise his role as Akasaka in Higurashi Daybreak and Higurashi John, but nowhere else. I guess the man just liked PSP. Ironic also, given that Daisuke Ono would end up voicing Jotaro Kujo in JoJo. Other characters with different voice actors include Rena's dad, Satoshi Hojo, Hifumi Takano, and many more. With the popularity of the first, eventually every arc was adapted as a drama CD, spanning from either 200 to 300 minutes in length. They would also release Apprehend discs, which feature voice acting of the tips from each arc, alongside an exclusive short story called The Family Head's White Day. Although there are no versions of this arc online from what I could find, we can assume this is about Mion getting Keiichi chocolate for White Day. White Day is a Japanese holiday that takes place a month after Valentine's Day, where women who receive Valentine's chocolate are meant to give back chocolate to whomever gave them some in the first place. It wasn't until the 2007 release of Higurashi that the visual novel had every arc voice acted, which is crazy because this means the anime had voice acting before the visual novel ever did. Oddly enough, the visual novel had a different save for Okanogi than the anime and drama CD. In the drama CD and anime, he was voiced by Jiro Kosuke, but in the visual novel for both Higurashi and Umineko, he's voiced by Ken Narita. And it's not just him either. Rina Mamiya shares the same voice actress in the visual novel and drama CD, but has a different one in the anime adaptations. In every anime adaptation, she's represented by Misa Watanabe, but in both the visual novel and drama CD, Rina is voiced by Kyoko Hikami. It's weird, it's surprising, and it's complicated. Why are some of the side characters all over the place across all mediums for him? And why is Akasaka both a self-insert and a double JoJo reference? These questions we may never have the answer to.
Wasn't a dream. At the end of each arc in the visual novel, there is something called a cast party. It's where all the characters in the series come together and act as if the arc you've just read was a story or play that they had just performed. A lot of the time, it's a place for them to make cheesy jokes and allow the audience to get to know each character better. But after, the cast does something surprising, heavily hinting that the world Rika just visited wasn't a dream. When Mion says the world was a dream, Rena and Shion quickly correct her. In one of her lines, Sadako seems to directly reference the butterfly dream philosophy, that if Rika chose the other world, her original world would have been the dream. Just because one world was presented as such doesn't make it any less real. But posing it as one was to try and make that final decision easier, so Rika could return to her original world and her friends. I've said world way too many times in that sentence. Even then, the cast doesn't state if the other world was indeed real or not, so debates about it will likely continue. But then again, there shouldn't be a definitive answer. It's supposed to be ambiguous.
Kuredashi. Higurashi no Nakukoro ni Kuredashi Hen, or the Goods Releasing Chapter, is a collection of what-if stories given out to people in Japan who purchased the last volume of the Himatsubushi Hen manga, and the first volumes of the Sumihoroboshi Hen, Meakashi Hen, and Yoigoshi Hen on the first day they released. Kuredashi Hen is a light novel that's chock full of scrapped ideas from the original Higurashi visual novel. It's got 16 different scenarios and goes all the way up to Minagoroshi Hen. The scenarios themselves are little writing fragments from Higurashi's first drafts, and include some pretty different story beats. For example, Irie was originally supposed to be a teacher at the Okonomiya school. Akasaka was supposed to die during his first trip to Hinamizawa. Satoshi had a completely different personality, where he was more of a cool, serious type. All of the scrapped scenarios start with a little introduction from Ryukishi, where he talks about the original intentions for the scenarios and sometimes why they were discarded. It's also got key artwork from people who worked on the Higurashi manga adaptations, like Jiro Suzuki. The first serialization was a success, so later that year, they released Kuradashi Zoku, a second volume of the light novel. It came with a purchase on the first day of the sequel volumes of the manga. In 2020, a couple of fans worked together to turn these what-if stories into a playable visual novel, completely translated into English. A huge, massive shout out to Dr. Diablo for their hard work with this project. If you want to download them and read those what-ifs for yourself, the link will be in the description.
Hinamizawa Bus Stop. Hinamizawa Bus Stop is the original version of Higurashi no Nakakoro ni. Back before it was even a visual novel in 2002, it was a stage play in 2000. It was meant to take place all at one location, that being the bus stop of Hinamizawa during the rain. Here, Rika Furude and Mion Sonozaki would encounter construction workers of the Hinamizawa Dam and a freelance writer, and they'd begin to talk about their opinions on the dam project and of Yashiro-sama's curse. The cast features a much older version of Rika Furude, a younger, more poppy version of Mion Sonozaki, and various other characters that appear and join them while they wait for the bus while it's pouring outside. After submitting the stage play to a local theater company, it was promptly rejected, but because of their love for Tsukihime, Ryu's brother encouraged him to turn it into a sound novel. The cast underwent various name, personality, and appearance changes. The only thing that remained the same were Mion and Rika's names and hair colors, and the story about Yashiro-sama's curse harming the construction site workers that wished to destroy the town of Hinamizawa. Over the years, the original stage play has been adapted as a visual novel twice, one with solid color sprites to show who each character was before they became the characters we know them as today, and the other with unique original sprites, and it's been given its own 10-chapter manga. Even though it was rejected at first, in 2015 the stage play finally managed to get its place in the theater.
Satoshi Arc. This one comes to us thanks to the Iceberg's creator, otherwise I probably wouldn't have been able to find this information. In an interview from 2005, Ryukishi expressed that he planned for the Higurashi visual novel to be much more like a standard visual novel with routes you could pick. The first route was with Rena, called Rena-Han, the second one was with Mion, called Mion-Han, and the third was Satoshi. In fact, Satoshi originally wasn't even Satoko's brother. This was established later on in writing to make Satoko, quote, suffer more and rise from the bottom. Lovely, isn't it? Thank you, Ryukishi. I wonder what the original goal for a Satoshi arc would have looked like. If Keiichi was the main character still at this point in time, does that mean that Keiichi would have had a gay love story with him? Is that why Satoshi is kinda gay with Keiichi and Kira? We may never know for sure.
No Himatsubushi. This entry comes to us thanks to r/Thieves of Heart on Reddit. Himatsubushi Hen did not actually exist originally. At the end of the Himatsubushi Hen manga, Ryukishi gives us some insight into the production of this arc. Originally, Chapter 4 was slated to be Meakashi Hen. However, Ryukishi was struggling to find an ending to the arc that satisfied him, especially since many fans were eager to see a Shion-dedicated chapter, and his other job was killing him. So he decided instead to write Himatsubushi Hen, hence its title, the Time-Wasting Arc, as he was essentially wasting time, and he was worried with this arc that he would waste the time of others. At first, this arc was apparently much smaller than we know it to be today, which is crazy because even by today's standards, it's a pretty small arc overall. In fact, Himatsubushi Hen was entirely planned to be a filler arc, but by the time he'd revised and finished it, it was much longer than he planned it to be, and much more important of a story than just a throwaway filler arc. As the deadline approached for the release of Chapter 4, he submitted this instead since he was much more confident in the story now, and also because Meakashi Hen was not close to being done. Over time, Himatsubushi Hen grew in importance until Ryukishi decided to make it a core part of the series. Its POV character, Mamoru Akasaka, would later come back to play a pivotal role in the final arc, Matsuribayashi Hen.
Miyuki died alongside her mother. Miyuki is Akasaka's daughter, who is born and raised happily by both her parents in fragments when Akasaka listens to Rika and goes back to Tokyo. In fragments where he doesn't heed her advice, his wife Yukie slips down a staircase and passes away. We generally hear that the doctors are able to rescue Miyuki. However, this isn't always the case. In a bad ending for Higurashi Kizuna, Miyuki dies alongside her mother, leaving Akasaka all alone in that fragment.
Watanagashi anime intro. During the anime adaptation of Watanagashi Hen by Studio Dean, we see Rika stabbing herself repeatedly in the head as Shion laughs at her. However, this scene doesn't happen in the manga or visual novel. Instead, Rika tries to inject Shion with C-173, but fails, getting injected herself and then proceeding to be tortured in the Sonozaki estate's basement. In the visual novel and manga adaptation for Meakashi Hen, this is when Rika stabs herself with a knife, as she remembers what happened in Watanagashi Hen and wants to avoid being meaninglessly tortured by Shion again. Basically, in the manga and visual novel, it's the distinction with how Rika dies that makes it clear that Watanagashi Hen and Meakashi Hen are two different fragments. However, in the anime canon, since this scene is implied to happen in both fragments, it has led many to wonder if the two are the same fragment in the Dean adaptation.
Mobile-only arcs. In 2006, Taito would port Higurashi no Nakakoni to mobile phones. These were nicknamed iMode arcs as they were only available on phones released on a Japanese internet flip phone. In 2007, the mobile ports would be re-released by Dwango. This app featured artwork from Dean anime, as it was being released around the same time that it came out, and would also feature two exclusive arcs called Nizaki Kashihen and Kokokuro Sushihen, with original characters not featured outside of the game: Keiko Tsusumiya, Minoru Kajiwara, Wakapa Inoue, Hirohumi Inoue, Tomoyo Ikano, and Hiromi Kano. While both were originally considered lost media, Nizaki Kashihen has been fully uploaded to YouTube by Angel Alejandro Laberpresador. However, Kokokuro Sushihen seems to be still lost to this day. I don't think many people know Nizaki Kashihen is available on YouTube, as the video has only 800 views over the last 5 years, and is completely in Japanese. So dedicated Higurashi fans out there, let's get this thing translated. Hopefully in time, Kokokuro Sushihen will be recovered.
What's up guys, Hunter popping in here to give a little bit more information. Thanks to the complete analysis book, we at least know the story synopsis for both arcs, and thank you to the 7th expansion fandom page for sharing this with us. The story for Nisagashi Hen is Keiko Suzuyama, a magazine reporter investigating the murder case at the Hinamizawa Dam. She has gone missing, so editor-in-chief Masanori Kawashima asks the detective Minoru Kajiwari to investigate her whereabouts. Kajiwara visits Hinamizawa but is unable to obtain convincing information and urged by Detective Oishi of the local police to go home. Although Kajiwara is at a loss, he meets a girl named Wakaba who knows Suzuyama and learns that her disappearance is related to a series of mysterious deaths in the past. Probably got a lot of those names wrong. These are spellings and names that I'm not very familiar with. As for the other story, Kokoro Kuzushihen is about Wakaba Ino, who is an elementary school student attending the Hinamizawa branch school. She loses both her parents in an accident, but is put up for adoption, with Hirohumi, who claims to be her distant relative, adopting her. Wakaba gradually opens up to Hirohume's dedication. However, one day she witnesses her stepfather chasing down the outsider, the reporter Suzuyama, whom Wakaba has befriended. Since then, Wakaba can no longer trust her stepfather. And this is all we have for the stories about these two, until Nisagahashi Hen is translated and Kokoro Katsushi is found, rediscovered. Also available as a Dwango release for the iMode according to 7th Expansion's fandom page was the previously mentioned Higurashi Mahjong, a movie puzzle minigame to make screenshots from the Dean anime, another puzzle game, a moe calculator, a calendar, a Japanese card game called President, and a food eating minigame called Kui Arashihen. Unfortunately, outside of Mahjong, nearly all of these are also considered lost media. But you never know. Internet works in very mysterious ways, so there's a chance that one day these will reappear.
Tomoe. Mina Tomoe is a detective at the Kakiyuichi police station, and is one of the main characters that appear in the advanced story arcs, like Somi Utsushihen, Kagebushihen, and Tokihogushihen. A lot of people know about Natsumi because of her appearance in the manga exclusive chapter, which was more accessible, but not many people know about Tomoe, since she only appears in the console arcs. The people that have read the console arcs love her, and some even regard her as the best character in the franchise. Although they aren't super relevant to her, some other characters people may not know about are Otobe Akira, a Satoshi lookalike from Yogi Yoshihen, and Osaki Nagisa introduced in Higurashi Kitsuna Rasen.
The Game Boy Advance port. Higurashi started to gain traction well after the release of Nintendo's Game Boy Advance, picking up speed during the lifespan of the DS. That didn't stop developers at Inside Cap from making a program called Or the Cicadas Cry on the Palm, though according to Google Translate it is Higurashi in the palm of my hand, which I actually think is pretty cool. The program allowed users who previously owned the Higurashi question arcs to convert and play them on their Game Boy Advance system. After the program was developed, shockingly, it was picked up and sold with permission by 7th Expansion themselves, making it an officially licensed program and release of the game.
Hanyu's design inspiration. Ryukichi has long since known what he wanted Hanyu to look like before her visual debut in Minago Shuriken. Fans speculated for years what Oyashiro-sama looked like beforehand. Fans would pass around fan art like mad on the 07 expansion bulletin board, but one stood out from Chikage Yuki. This all drew Oyashiro-sama with the characters being different than they normally are. In their edition, it's meant 8 white tails. It showcased a girl with long purple hair in Miko outfit and several white tails. While the tails were never a part of the original design, with her having horns instead, since it was referred to as a demon, Ryukishi actually liked the hair color so much that he took inspiration from the message board and made the hair color Hanyu's official design.
Limit. Limit is another story like Katari Banaishihen, much like Butterfly Dream, that is probably the most popular of the anthology story. It was the grand prize winner for the third anthology, receiving its own manga and drama CD. While the manga is a bit on the shorter side, the drama CD is over 40 minutes long, and incredibly sad. Limit also received its own mobile exclusive arc, but this of course has become lost media much like the other third releases. In the story of Limit, after the events of Matsuri Bayashi Head, Shion succumbs to the syndrome after learning that Satoshi is actually alive under the Irie clinic. Irie explains to her that they're struggling to wake him up because they don't know enough about the syndrome yet. Shion kills Mion to bring a subject to her, and takes Keiichi to the Sotozaki basement where she plans to torture him to raise his levels to the syndrome. However, her plans are thwarted when the ghost of Mion apparates, scaring her and saying goodbye to Keiichi. After this, Shion dies and we flash forward to Keiichi putting flowers on Mion's grave. Sadako appears to do the same, but seems to also have to succumb to the syndrome, wanting to continue Shion's wish of trying to wake up Satoshi. It is left in the air about what exactly happens to Keiichi at the end of the story. Apparently the details between the drama CD and the manga are different. You can find the drama CD on Best Sotozaki's second channel, completely translated into English.
Hanyu was not stupid. While many fans are quick to point that Hanyu seems rather stupid in Minagoroshi Hen and Matsuri Bayashi Hen, especially since she spent 100 years looping yet somehow didn't know the truth behind Takano and the Irie clinic, but Ryukishi07 in an interview pointed out that Hanyu isn't as stupid as she may seem. In fact, this interview implies that Hanyu actually knew that Takano was the culprit the entire time, but held the information to herself. If true, the reason she did this is unclear. Some speculate that she wanted more time with human interaction after not speaking to anyone for a century. Others speculate that much like Saikoroshi Hen, she wanted Rika to be able to come to the conclusion in time on her own. All we know for sure is that after Saikoroshi Hen, Hanyu definitely is not as stupid as she comes off as, but we'll never know her intentions for holding this information from Rika, as even Rika doesn't ever speculate that Hanyu was potentially lying to her.
We're at the tip of the iceberg now. Level 5. Why are those footsteps always behind me? I never see anyone when I turn around. I can feel something crawling under my skin. It's so itchy. Level 5, the state of no return, and the highest level of Hinamizawa syndrome. Sorry for going theater kid there. It's here that hallucinations are at their most intense and vivid, that they begin to hear Hanyu, and that whoever is level 5 will become extremely violent. No one is safe from them. The host experiences intense formication, or a condition where the person believes bugs are under their skin. They will begin to claw and scratch at these spots until their skin pierces, typically where their lymph nodes are, and then the poor soul will bleed out and die. Level 5 of the iceberg is about as niche as it gets. When glancing over this, I only recognized a single entry on the entire level. Level 5 is one where only the most diehard of Higurashi and 7 expansion fans will know these entries.
Original Mayakashi Draft. As it turns out, the original draft for Mayakashi Hen was very different from the version that eventually released in 2004. In a production blog post from 2003, Ryukishi actually tells us that Mayakashi Hen originally had Satoshi as the central protagonist instead of Shion. The entire intention of Mayakashi Hen was to clear up details and stories about Satoshi to the audience. The aspect of the story did stick, as Mayakashi Hen does clarify a bunch of theories about Satoshi, but clearly the protagonist was changed to Shion Sonozaki instead. It's pretty interesting that Satoshi almost played such a huge part in the story. Ryukishi is known to have regretted some things in the main plot, which is why things happen a little differently in Go and Sotsu. I wonder if he regrets not making Satoshi the lead of this arc. Probably not though, as Mayakashi Hen and Shion respectively have gone down as fan favorites.
Original opening. This circles back to
蔵出し
the light novel collection of what ifs we mentioned earlier. Among them is a chapter called A Prologue Version Contrasting.
鬼隠し
So we're gonna translate most of that, except the arc name itself? Yeah, okay. This details how, in the original draft of
罪滅ぼし
the arc started off with Rena killing Rena, and was meant to have internal dialogue, directly paralleling the beginning of...
鬼隠し
For those who don't know, in the
鬼隠し
visual novel, while Keiichi kills Rena and Mio, he has a very detailed internal monologue about how he's extremely sad that things turned out this way, and how he mourns potentially loving Rena. This would make complete sense, as
罪滅ぼし
is meant to be an answer arc to
鬼隠し
Karin. So, this entry could be referring to two things. The first, and what I likely believe the iceberg is referring to, is a potential scrapped character. Back in 2002, when Onikakushi Hen dropped at Comiket 62, the soundtrack had an 18-second song called Karin. It was never actually used in the game, and had the same kanji for Rika, but in reverse. For a long time, people speculated that this was going to be the name for Oyashiro-sama, when they were revealed because of that connection to Rika. After all, Rika was supposed to be the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. However, this was proved to not be the case, as Oyashiro-sama was actually named Hanyu. When she was revealed, many people then thought that Karin could have been a potential scrapped character. Some even say that Karin was a working name for Fredrika Bernkastel, as her poems were not yet a part of the series. What do you think? Was Karin the original name for Hanyu? Was she original Fredrika Bernkastel? Or was Karin a character that never made it to the final version of Higurashi? The other thing Karin could be referring to is Karin Suzuragi, who was the artist for the manga adaptations of Onikakushi Hen, Sumahoroboshi Hen, Matsuri Bayashi Hen, and Saikoroshi Hen. She also made the artwork for the Renapon manga, some of the stories included in Katari Banashi, and some of the drama CDs. Yeah, she kind of does a lot, but it could be referring to either one of these two things.
Unused poem. Despite being such an iconic part of the series, Higurashi's Bernkastel poems weren't actually introduced until Watanagashi Hen. At Comiket 63, Watanagashi Hen was first released and included a poem, alongside an updated version of Onikakushi Hen with a poem since it didn't originally have one. However, when Tatarigoroshi Hen came out at Comiket 64, Watanagashi Hen and Onikakushi Hen were both once again updated to include new poems. Ryukishi referred to these as the canon poems. Thanks to the Rena-Rena Toshokan, we not only have what the original poems were, but we have them translated. Onikakushi Hen's read as follows. Today, a tiny pleasant thing happened. When I opened a locker, I found a pin inside my shoe. Even though there are 50 people in our class, someone chose me. It's proof that there's someone who thinks about me more than anyone else. I want to tell everyone about that tiny happiness. That's why I put a pin inside everyone else's shoes too. And Watanagashi Hen's was, someone is patiently warming an egg. If you warm it with love, then surely it's happiness that will be born. It will be filled with love and joy. Someone is patiently warming an egg. If you warm it with rage, what will be born? I am also warming an egg. I'm warming it with gas, so it doesn't matter which kind of egg it is. This isn't the only instance of poems being changed. In Ryukishi's production journal for the making of Sumihoroboshi, he shared a different poem with us than the one that made it into the final version. However, it is completely in Japanese, so I don't know what it says, and I'm not going to run it through Google Translate and give you a bastardized version of it, so here it is for those that wish to properly translate it. It makes you wonder just how many poems are actually out there that Frederica or Ryukishi has written.
Mastermind Irie. Through various interviews, Ryukishi's confirmed that the original mastermind for the odd happenings in Hinamizawa and the deaths of Rika wasn't going to be Takano. It would instead be Irie. Some of the reasons Ryukishi cites for having it changed to Takano are kind of funny, like him saying Irie was too similar to Musket, the villain from Castle in the Sky. In other cases, his reasons make a lot of sense, like feeling that Satoko genuinely needed someone else on her side in Tatarigoroshi. Other reasons that aren't explicitly stated but could be more obvious is that the clinic's literally named the Irie Clinic. Over time, I'm sure people, not just characters, but readers, will be able to kind of piece that together that he's responsible. Another that I think could be a reason behind this is to show two pathways abused people could go down. Takano and Satoko share similarly tragic and rough childhoods, where Satoko would show growth and becoming her own better and strong person after her abuse. Takano instead would continue that cycle from a certain point of view, seeing it as a way to show power and reclaim that power with force over others. That idea and dynamic would be really interesting if Go and Sotsu wouldn't just make Satoko follow that same path. But side tangent of Gosotsu hate aside, I am glad he made this change for Takano to be the end boss of the series instead of Irie. It's a lot more interesting that one of the workers for the clinic is actually the one who runs it instead of Irie, and is responsible for everything, though it is an interesting idea nonetheless. And if Go and Sotsu was going to do one thing in that compilation of random characters going level 5, I think it would have been a great reference to have Irie do some evil shit, especially with his love for lobotomies, apparently.
Rika in Onikakashi Drama CD. As I previously mentioned, the Higurashi drama CDs were the first instance of the Japanese cast of Higurashi playing their characters. This led to very unique and visceral performances, as it was the very first time any of them had voiced these scenes. Rika Seiyu Yukari Tamura still voiced her here too, but gave a very different type of performance. Here, have a listen.
圭一の痛いの痛いの飛んでいけです。腰とかはくじかなかったですか？こうして撫でていれば痛いの痛いのは消えてきますです。
It sounds exactly like the voice of someone who's stuck in a time loop for over a century, but sounds nothing like a 10-year-old. Yukari-san changed up the performance to sound more in line with how we know Rika to sound like today for future arcs. But it was really jarring that the first time we ever heard Rika speak, she wasn't masking.
Rika's stuffed dolls. In Ryukishi's production journal blog, he detailed early concepts for all the characters in Higurashi. The blog post is in all Japanese, but on Rena-Rena Toshokan it's translated for all of us. In the early concepts of Rika, she had a character trait of carrying around a stuffed doll. When she noticed people were stressed, instead of giving them head pats like she does now in the series, she would let people hold her doll to comfort them. I think changing this detail makes sense, given her actual personality we learn about in Minagoroshi Hen would probably hate stuffed animals.
Comic Relief Oyo. This one is brought to us thanks to the Iceberg creator. In an interview in the official character guide, Yukichi and his brother confirmed that Oyo was originally going to be a gag character that really appeared. One of the jokes they share is the grandmother's outside the window was the 5th floor. Naturally, this was changed, and probably for the better. But it would have been really funny if Oyo had actually been a teleporting flying silly character of whimsy.
Gay Oishi. This is a popular fan theory that spawned due to Oishi not being married in the series despite being such a prime catch of a perfect human being. And also because of how dedicated Oishi is to the dam manager after he passes. After all, he does spend the entire next few years of his life trying to bring whoever did the crime to justice. Him being gay has since been referenced twice in the franchise, although they were as gags in 2 chapters of the fan anthology Kateri Banashi. The first is Tsukeko Mashi, where he accidentally kisses Keiichi, and Keiichi no Kokohaku Time, where he confesses to being in love with Keiichi. Although, if I'm being real with you, Oishi has shown interest in women several times throughout the franchise. As a certified bisexual, I think we need to recognize him for the bicon he is.
Tamane. In multiple interviews around the time of Onikakashi Hen's release in 2002, Ryukishi hinted at the possibility of giving Mion a twin sister. However, her name wasn't Shion. Her name was Tamane Sonozaki, confirmed by his brother in the official character guide. Ryukishi scrapped this idea before release, however he brought it back after Oni's reception because a lot of fans speculated that both Rena and Mion were switching places with twins as an explanation for their sudden behavior changes. This fan theory and speculation is likely what gave birth to the idea of the twin swapping between Mion and Shion in the series. We don't know if Tamane was different from Shion outside of her name. There is potential that she was an entirely scrapped character like Karin that never got to see the light of day.
Original ending. Detailed in the What Ifs is what if Shion survived the Great Hinamizawa disaster, a story that was the original epilogue for After Keiichi survives the disaster, he is brought to a hospital by the Japanese Self-Defense Force. In the main story, he was kept under heavy watch since they couldn't be sure he wasn't involved with the disaster itself. However, in the What If, he was placed in a normal hospital ward. While there, he's visited by Shion, who also survived, thanks to being at St. Lucia. He learns from her that the legend of Oyashiro's curse has become mainstream, and that reporters are trying to meet with any survivors or previous residents to get more information about it. However, Keiichi couldn't care less. He's just glad someone else survived, someone he knew and cared about. It's accompanied by some bittersweet artwork, and is an interesting take on the ending. Ryukishi later changed this to have Shion die in the hospital, likely falling victim to Hinamizawa syndrome. He wanted Keiichi to feel hopeless, to truly be the only survivor of Hinamizawa.
Mion's death in Sumihoroboshi. This entry comes to us thanks to the help of the Iceberg creator. In the Japanese release of the game, we got to see thanks to the VTuber Chibitoge, there were some notes for Ryukishi in the credits of Sumihoroboshi Hen. I can't read kanji, but the Iceberg creator translated it for me, bless their soul. It reads the following: Mion Sonozaki. She may be the character you feel the most sorry for in this arc. Rena may have been jealous of her popularity since Meikashi. In an early draft, I was thinking of having her get murdered, but I'm glad she made it out alive and well. By the way, the definition of a minor injury is 4 weeks of recovery. As you can see, Ryukishi originally intended for Mion to be murdered when the arc took place, implying Rena would do it, but later changed his mind. Instead, she likely dies with the rest of the village during the Great Hinamizawa disaster.
Mion had no twin sister. Mion having no twin sister refers back to Tamane, as while Ryukishi thought about giving Mion a twin in Onikakushi, he scrapped that idea, and Tamane was not in the final version of the arc. This means in the original release of Onikakushi, Mion was an only child, and explains why Shion really doesn't show up till the next one. Ryukishi changed his mind later on after reading many fan theories. With the release of Watanagashi, Shion is introduced as Mion's identical twin, and some say there is a fabled third Sonozaki lurking in the shadows.
Saimoe 2007. In Japan during 2001, the Leaf Keyboard Saimoe tournament was created for the internet to find out who the most moe or cute character in otaku culture was that year. Fans would nominate characters from various series, and then everyone would vote in a bracket elimination. In 2002, the tournament was moved to the now defunct website 2 channel, and the name was changed to the Anime Saimoe tournament. The reason this is on the iceberg because in 2007, Rika Furude and Rena Ryugu were nominated for the tournament. Rena lost in the bracket, but Rika made it all the way to the finals against Nagi from Hayate the Combat Butler. In what seems like a controversial victory according to old message boards, Rika Furude won the entire tournament. The Saimoe tournament is still hosted today, with the most recent one being in 2025. It has since expanded from Japan and become an international phenomenon.
Miyotsukushi unused CG. In Miyotsukushi Hen, fans found 2 character graphics, or CGs, that weren't used in the game. One is of Mion holding her gun in Angel Mort, and the other of Keiichi climbing a tower. Later, we found that these were a part of a plot thread where, during the arc, Miyuki gets kidnapped by the Mountain Dogs. This was abandoned because it didn't relate at all to the struggles of the main cast in the rest of the series. After all, Miyotsukushi Hen was about overcoming the troubles present in every arc of Higurashi. Miyuki was never kidnapped during any of those arcs. Both were later brought back and used in 2015 for the Miyotsukushi Omote's all-cast review session.
Cool Satoshi. Another entry into Kurodashi Hen is Satoshi is cool and down to earth, which is a what if scenario from Meikashi Hen. Since Meikashi was going to be the first time we saw Satoshi in the entire series, Ryukishi had to figure out how to portray him. Originally, Satoshi and Satoko were transfer students to a school in Okinomiya, where Shion originally went before she was changed to attend St. Lucia Academy. His initial characterization was a lot more smooth, cool-headed, and blunt. He was popular with girls, and though he'd talk with Shion, he wouldn't hesitate to tell her to shut up when she interrupted his reading with idle chatter. The artwork included alongside this story by Yutori Hojo represents this idea of Satoshi perfectly, depicting him with a bit more of a frigid, reserved expression and a sharper gaze. This is of course very different from the Satoshi we know nowadays, who's a bit shy, awkward, and only really speaks up if it's to protect those he cares about, especially his beloved little sister.
Anti-piracy measures. This circles back to the GBA ports of Higurashi, Tenohira de Higurashi ga Naku. Crewe talked before about needing to have a copy of the game beforehand to be able to emulate it. When he said that, he really meant it. Back before fancy copy protection, some video games used to have screens that would appear and stop the game from being played if the software detected that it was an illegitimate copy. Classically, these anti-piracy screens have leaned on being unnerving, but nothing super scary. Things like the ones in Sonic and Donkey Kong Country 3 are nothing special, but really come alive when you imagine you're a kid playing them in the dead of night with the volume low so your parents can't hear. Getting this kind of screen like that would scare a kid shitless. They provide a distinct sort of discomfort, like the game is reaching through the screen and shattering the illusion of escapism to call you a criminal. It's not a jump scare in the classic sense, but if you're in a vulnerable state of mind, it can get under your skin. It's like somehow the game knows what you did and knows you too. Entire horror games have banked their premises on that. It was that kind of horror which caused a resurgence of fake anti-piracy screens on the internet in 2020. Starting with this infamous Mario Party DS anti-piracy hoax, fake piracy screens took off as an art trend and gradually got wilder in scope until they were just doing crazy creepypasta shit. It really was a wild trend to witness. The internet can never quite nail subtle scares. Surely no real anti-piracy screen actually went over the top like this, right? Well, as it turns out, Higurashi was way ahead of the curve. The company which developed the Higurashi GBA port, Inside Cap, was known for making mobile ports of visual novels. For whatever reason, Inside Cap decided to implement a nasty little form of piracy protection. Their later ports, including Higurashi, would detect whether or not you were playing on a real Game Boy or an emulator. If you're using an emulator, one of the characters would appear on the screen and read out your computer's username and IP address, making it look like they're doxing you. Talk about making it seem like the game knows the player, and what a way to scare the shit out of pirates! In Higurashi's case, the character they chose was Rena, which is, I don't know, it's somehow really fitting for her to just nonchalantly dox the player. In all of my research into anti-piracy screens, Inside Caps are by far the ones that get the closest to the anti-piracy creepypasta trend of the 2020s. And GBA Higurashi was released back in 2005! I'm shocked it isn't talked about more. Either way, don't stream the GBA port without preparing or you'll straight up dox yourself.
Akasaka original ending. Oh, I get it. Just because I'm an Akasaka fan, you want to do this to me? Fine. Once again, in Kuradashi Hen, Ryukishi details how the original ending for Himatsubushi Hen had Akasaka succumbing to Once again, in Kuradashi Hen, Ryukishi details how the original ending for Himatsubushi Hen had Akasaka succumbing to Hinamizawa syndrome after finding out about his wife's death. Although it seems to be a joke, Ryukishi claims to have not put this in the final story because he couldn't find where he'd written it. Years later, Akasaka would find his way to Hinamizawa syndrome during the runtime of Higurashi Go. And as always, the manga does it better.
0 kill count hatchet. In the visual novel, manga, and drama CDs of the original series, Rena's hatchet, or Nata if you're a big weeb, never once killed anyone. It feels like an intentional irony to me that her iconic weapon that she carries all the time and in most promotional material was never used a single time to murder someone. It's always poised so dramatically on covers and in promotional art, but never once is it actually used to kill people. I think it's really cool, honestly. Just another way Higurashi psychs you out with horror imagery, only for its real heart to be in tight character writing and standing united in friendship. The Dean anime ruins this, though. In the adaptation for Sumi Horoboshi, when Rena kills Teppei, she swings the hatchet before the screen cuts to black, which tells you basically all you need to know. Though you could make the argument she didn't explicitly use it on screen to kill him, so there's a chance the kill count for this thing is still 0. You might be asking, well, what does she use if not the giant hatchet she carries everywhere? In Sumi Horoboshi's manga and visual novel, she uses shards of glass and a pipe to kill Rena, and a random axe to kill Teppei. The Iceberg creator shared with Hunter that in the drama CDs, she's depicted holding this axe for Sumi Horoboshi's cover. She does, however, for sure use the hatchet to kill people in Higurashi Outbreak. Ah, good ol' Outbreak.
Shion abused Satoko in Tatarigo Roshi. After the release of Miyaka Hashihen, we learned that Shion beat and killed Satoko during that arc in Watanagashi-hen. This led many fans to theorize that in Tatakoro Roshi-hen, after Kiichi killed Teppei, Shion was the one who had been abusing Satoko. Satoko just hallucinated and saw her as her uncle. At the time, this seemed to make the most sense, as no one knew who else could have been abusing her since Teppei was dead. Over time, with the release of Minago Roshi and Matsuria Bayashi, this theory has been proven to not be the case, as Satoko was simply just suffering from hallucinations caused by the Hinamizawa syndrome. Just like Satoshi hallucinates his aunt, Satoko hallucinates her uncle. The wounds on her body were inflicted by herself, subconsciously, as confirmed by Chie-sensei, since she had a tendency to do it in the past.
Yarudora Doublecast. Now, of all of the entries on this iceberg, I think this is the one that probably led me down the deepest and hardest to find details about the entry. Yaradora Series Volume 1, Double Cast, was released to the very first PlayStation in 1998, developed by the now defunct Sugar and Rockets Incorporated, and with animation from Production IG, who is a studio known for the first few seasons of Haikyuu, Psycho Pass, and Ghost in the Shell. The first game would follow a college student rescued by a girl with amnesia, only remembering that her name was Akasaka Mitsuki. The two begin to make a movie together, adapting a script that is notoriously cursed, and misfortune quickly falls on them after they begin production. Throughout the year after Double Cast, they would drop Kietsu o Takishimete, Sampagoita, and Yukiwara no Hana. This series is incredibly small and barely talked about on the internet, but for those that know it, they've given it stellar reviews and referred to it as one of the foundational visual novels. Although I couldn't find the exact interview, because that's really how hard this information was to get, Ryukishi has apparently said that the hallucinated expressions of Rena and Mion that Keiichi sees in Onikakushi-hen was inspired by similar expressions made in Yaradora. The only interview that I can find regarding Ryukishi even talking about this game is him mentioning that he liked it, but because the game consisted of no choices despite being a visual novel, it was received poorly by the public. While it hasn't been confirmed anywhere, the character being named Akasaka Mitsuki probably is what inspired Akasaka's name and his daughter Miyuki. While it really is hard to find anything that explicitly confirms or denies Yaradora inspiring Higurashi, it is listed on multiple sites as being the case, so it's possible this specific interview with Ryukishi has been deleted or is only available in Japanese. I'm not entirely sure. Yaradora does seem like a very interesting series though, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in checking it out now.
Takano's Cat. On December 11th, 2004, Ryukishi released the Higurashi no Nakukoro ni booster book. This contained a short manga, original sketches, and concept art of the characters, the doujin artist Honjo Raita's thoughts on Tatarigoroshi, and an interview conducted by the editor Yano. In the booklet's interview, Ryukishi talks about his inspiration for Angel More and the uniforms, some of the real-life inspirations from Shirakawa Go, and more. One of the topics mentioned by Ryukishi is that originally, Takano was meant to be a doctor instead of just a nurse, and she was going to have a pet cat. While the cat may seem random, Ryukishi says that she was going to be open and herself in front of the cat, which maybe could have played into some type of shenanigans during the series.
Who gave Miyako the coin? In Matsuri Bayashi-hen, a young Miyako Tanashi, who we later come to know as Mio Takano, escapes a brutal foster care system during a thunderstorm. Thinking this was all pointless and that her life has no purpose, she challenges God to kill her right then and there, and if God doesn't, he has to turn her destiny around. Immediately after, lightning strikes a tree directly in front of her, and she comes out unscathed. After this, she miraculously finds a phone booth, and even more miraculously finds a coin in the booth to make a phone call. In the manga and anime, the coin is already present, but in the visual novel, the coin seems to literally appear out of thin air. Miyako is cited to believe this to be an actual sign from God, and because of how miraculous it seems to be, fans have gone on to speculate for years what actually happened here. Some believe that the god who helped Takano is Hanyu, but if true, that means she set up Rika's demise. After the introduction of the other gods in the console arcs, some people believe it could be Une or Tamurahime. Once Higurashi Go and Sotsu aired, some people believed it could be Yua, given how she manipulates Satoko into essentially recreating Takano's game with Rika. Or, if we cite umineko, many people believe it to be Lambda Delta, given how many connections the two have. However, we may never know the truth.
Oh, and with that, the entire iceberg is explained. I hope you learned as much and had as much fun with this video as we did, because fuck man, does this rabbit hole for this series go deep. We're not even done yet though, as following this video, we are planning to release a bonus layer of even more information we found out about the series while working on this iceberg that we weren't able to talk about it all here. I hope you will all look forward to that. A massive thank you to all of the amazing guests who came along with me on this journey. I had a really silly idea of making the Higurashi community equivalent of Avengers Endgame, and I think this video was able to accomplish that. And that's it. Thanks for watching this behemoth of a video that took far longer to work on than it probably should have, and I will see you guys next time.
Later.